live for the sake of the clan, said Cian's father. He understood that for the sake of the family, it was impossible to show weakness, even if he had to sacrifice himself. Shin fights next to his brother, like a shadow, protecting his back from enemies as his father. Wounded, Cian gets heavily on one knee, but his eyes burn with determination to continue. The enemy mocks him. What an invaluable sight is a knight who is ready to die for his clan. Shin gritted his teeth, his fists tremble with anger and pain. But he will not. Boris, a famous knight, goes to meet the enemies. One against the strongest commanders of the blood in his sword and wounds on the body speak of the severity of the battle, but he continues to stand. The enemy observes from above, smiling, as expected from the brother of Aya. Very interesting, Cian whispered. Boris. His heart sank with anxiety for his friend. A mysterious enemy appears, grinning. Cian Wirt, he says, as if he had known him for a long time. Black magic begins to swirl around the enemy, creating an ominous whirlwind. Cian in horror. Who made you do it, Emperor? He is trying to understand the source of evil. The enemy grins, this disgusting black fog. He seems to enjoy on his own. A surge of magic. You are a murderer from the haze, Cian realizes. I respect the principles that keep you on your feet, but you are too weak, the enemy says coldly. I guarantee you will not see tomorrow. I will end you here and now, he threatens, squeezing magic in a fist. A powerful barrier is formed around them. This is a 4-star magic barrier. Cian looks at the barrier thinking, I need to find a way out and reveal the truth with my brother. His eyes burn with determination. Barrier. Then I will tear him to shreds. Fury and strength boil. At that moment, a voice is heard. Enough, Cian. Someone stops him, perhaps a brother or an unexpected ally. Cian looks in surprise at Acellus dressed in sparkling golden armor. His appearance inspired. Red energy continues to rage around Cian. He is in shock, not understanding what is happening and why his brother is opposite. Live for the sake of the clan. The words of the father pop up in memory. The success of Askell is the success of Cian. But why then are they on different sides? Askell looks with a cold look, as if he intends to fulfill the duty without thinking about the price. Cian lowering his eyes, realizing the culprit of all suffering in front of him is Askell. With horror whispers Cian when he confidently approaches him, sparkling with a golden sword. Askell does not hesitate, but in his gaze a shadow of doubt runs, which only Cian. Askell's sword, shrouded in light, sticks into the ground, destroying magic, but scarlet flashes continue to rage. Cian in confusion. What is happening? Why, brother? His voice trembles with tension. And you fulfilled your duty well, Cian, Askell says calmly, as if it were part of the plan. For the sake of the clan, for the sake of people, Askell continues. His words sound as an excuse for his own action. For me, he suddenly adds, and these words beat Cian stronger than. Therefore, I'm trying. Askell tends his head as if this is the only way. Cian in anger. You took off all the responsibility, brother. His voice breaks, and the aura becomes brighter. Askell looks point blank. Was it a mistake? Doubt for the first time shines in his voice, but Cian does not hold back itself. Red energy around begins to rage, breaking. Do you not see your sins? Do you think all this is right? Cian screams, unable to restrain emotion. Murderer? He whispered, realizing that his brother considers him a criminal. My sins? What are you talking about? Cian's face distorts rage. His eyes are glowing with determination not to obey. The crown of the symbol of power pops up in his thoughts. The crown for which this whole war may have. And he recalls many hands reaching power, blood, and destruction, which have become part of their fate. The war for the unification of the continent turned into a nightmare. One of the knights, absorbed in darkness, holds in their hands the blue and crimson vortices of the forces that tear it from the inside. Before his eyes, the symbols of the Union, the same swords and the agreement for which he shed blood and trusted those who betrayed. The ministry was my life, he recalls, standing in the shadow of the one whom he once considered a hero. But now he sees as an. Clutching his fists, he tries to suppress the pain, but red energy breaks out, threatening to destroy everything around. You left me, after all that I did for you. In his voice, the pain of betrayal when darkness begins to absorb. If my body is torn to shreds, he is ready for anything to finish this battle. For 20 years I was your shadow, a dog on a chain. He screams, and the waves of magic explode from him. I will give everything I have right now. His eyes burn with hatred and madness. The scarlet flame burns the space. If I can destroy you, I will do it. Despair gives him strength, and magic becomes uncontrollable. People aside in horror. He still has so many mana? This is impossible for a person. Their faces are distorted by fear. Someone whispers in the dark, how stupid, watching his desperate struggle. Energy explosions continue, and Cian, shrouded in bloody magic, rushes forward, not seeing the barriers. Are you not ashamed of yourself? The voice of Askell watching this chaos come. Askell turns away. His face is gloomy, but in his eyes a hidden pain. Or maybe one blow is enough, Cian thinks, raising his weapons, preparing to apply a decisive. Just one. That's enough. He rushes forward. All power is concentrated in his hand. The red flash cuts the sky and Cian flies straight to the goal, not sparing itself. If I can hit his weak place so that he could not regenerate. The last thought flashes before the attack. Magic explodes in a dazzling broken, faced with the enemy, and the whole world freezes in this blow. And at that moment, when it seems that the blow reached the goal, something unexpected happens, forcing Cian to cry out of surprise. Boris creates a protective circle around him, trying to stop the destructive attack, but his face is full of anxiety. "Oh, you a miserable bastard," Askell says with contempt, watching Cian fights with the last forces. Cian, shrouded in a bloody aura, squeezes his teeth, preparing for the final blow. His eyes are full of determination. A powerful explosion of energy breaks the space, encountering an enemy, creating a huge wave of... Askell calmly approaches the wounded Ciana and coldly says, "I wanted to give you a chance, but you showed your real face." He looks at him from top to bottom and whispers, "From the very beginning, I knew that you were a demon." Cian, with an evil grin, replies, "It's good that I never trusted you," with difficulty raising my head. Askell sharply knocks Cian on the ground with a powerful blow, demonstrating his superiority. Turning around, he throws his soldiers a short one, "Come," and leaves without turning around. Cian lies on the ground, leaning on the sword, and whispers gloomily, "Damn," barely keeping in conscious. He looks into the sky and thinks, "Is this my last mistake?" Feeling the approach of the end. Having lost his strength, he closes his eyes, thinking, "Stupid. Memories pop up in my head. What is a meaningless life? What did I do right?" But suddenly a fire flashes in his eyes. He abruptly opens his eyes, is not ready to give up. Having gathered the rest of his strength, he rushes to the attack, flying right on Askell, wanting to take... "I have not finished!" shouts Cian, furiously waving his sword, shrouded in scarlet flame. Its blade overtakes Askell, powerful magic flashes in the air. A voice from the past, full of pain, sounds in his head. "Young Master. Young Master Cian!" A piercing cry seems to tear him out of this night. He jumps out of the bed in horror, all in sweat, realizing that he was in a trap of terrible... A girl with a soft smile looks at him. "It's time to get up, young master. How much can you sleep?" Cian, in shock, seeing Emily in front of him, a girl servant who suddenly appeared in front of him. He expands his eyes in surprise, not understanding what is happening and why. Emily joyfully reports that she is his new maid and will take care of him, as before, raising Cian even more questions. Looking around, Cian understands that he ended up in a room from his childhood and recalls how he once... He grabs his head, realizing, "I have become a child again." Unable to believe in what has happened, Emily, holding his hand, cheerfully says, "Young Master Cian, rise," not giving him time to recover. With a stubborn look, she reminds him that it is time to train and makes him get together. Cian asks in surprise, "Training?" as if he hears about it for the first time. Sitting on the bed, he wonders, what other training? Not understanding what awaits. The view from the window shows a familiar castle, the family estate of the Verda clan in which his childhood passed. Cian looks at the castle's towers and understands, "I return to the duchy, He is trying to realize what is happening, recalling, "So they say that before death, all life is carried before." In the courtyard, preparations for some important event are in full swing. Servants and knights scurry back and forth. Cian recalls that now 27 years ago, the Spring Festival of Foundation. It was a year before his admission to the academy, when he was still unknown to anyone. Every year, the duchy holds a duel tournament to identify the strongest fighters among young... The father of Cian, the Duke of Verta, is necessarily present at this event, observing all the participants. His opponent at the tournament was Drakenworth, his half-brother, the son of the Duke from a legitimate wife. Drandon's mother is Margaret Bezal, the official duchess, which means that Draken has always been considered a legal heir. Cian stands in front of Draken, who arrogantly says, "Do not try to do stupid things." Considering him a weak... Emily worries about Cian and asks, "Why don't you give up right away?" But he confidently replies, "I just need to win." Cian strains, feeling how everyone is looking at him with neglect, and this only enhances his determination. He looks at the sword, thinking, "This is just a rapier, but how hard it is in my..." Approaching the center of the arena, Cian slowly pulls the sword, knowing that this battle will solve. He squeezes the handle tightly and recalls how he was already standing here, being weak and human. Cian looks at Drain and, gritting his teeth, thinks, "I really returned to the past?" Drakeen, with a grin, says, "Look, I didn't run away. Well, it will be fun to break." Cian firmly looks ahead and thinks, "If I return to the past, then perhaps I can change my fate." His face becomes serious and determination appears in his eyes, which scares even himself. Drandon instantly rushes into the attack, waving his sword, intending to quickly end. "Where are you looking, idiot?" shouts Drain, attacking with rage, but Cian calmly leaves the blow. Cian deftly evades, and Drakeen grits his teeth in a furious, not believing that he dared not. Drake's rushes with hatred again. What are you standing? But Cian calmly watches his every. Cian moves sharply to the side, avoiding attacks, and Draken is surprised to notice his speed. The dumbfounded Draken almost loses his balance when Cian leaves the attack right in front of him. With anger, Drake's waves to a new blow, wanting to put Cian in place once and for. Coward! You dodge like a miserable coward! Drakeen shouts, not realizing that Cian just plays with him. Their swords collide, creating a boorish blow, and at that moment Cian first looks at Drain with cold confidence. Krantz writhes in pain, realizing that he had lost, and cannot believe that he was defeated by He screams to his knees, clutching his chest, unable to continue. Margaret in a panic calls Krantz, not believing his eyes that her son is so humiliated at all. Cian stands calmly and thinks, if I raise the sword now, the battle will be finished in my favor. But in his soul he feels, this is not enough. I must make him be afraid. He recalls how Krantz always mocked him and decides that he needs a good lesson. Cian looks at the cranes with burning eyes. If I do not break it now, he will hurt me. Krantz, humiliated and defeated, lies at his feet, realizing that now it is not the one who dominates. Cian throws the last look at him and decides that he will build his own path. Do not depend on. Krantz cries in fury, unable to come to terms with the defeat from the one who he considered below him. Chapter 1, Return and Betrayal. So Cian himself calls this turning point. The result of the fight is obvious. The Cracker lost, and everyone around became witnesses of his humiliation. Cian surprises. Did my victory make such an impression? Watching the reaction of the audience. The Duke, the ally of Cian's father, carefully watches him, evaluating the changed young man. Margaret, the mother of the man, casts a look at Cian full of hatred, realizing that her son had lost to Bast. Cian grins, seeing how Margaret is trying to maintain dignity after the shame of it. She asks with anime care, is everything okay with a crane? But anger glows in her eye. Margaret, hiding the resentment, leaves, throwing Ciana in the back of the ulcer. That's how duels happen. Cian, with a stone face, thinks, this is how they relate to me, as a bastard, not a native son. He recalls how Margaret once said, you must ask for alms on the street and not go here. And gloomy determination flashes in his. Cian, with burning eyes and a furious, thinks, maybe I should kill her right. He looks angrily at Margaret. His inner voice pushes to revenge for all humiliation. Cian grins, thinking, I know how to force her to suffer, and I will do it slowly, step by step. Margaret, not suspecting his true thoughts, says that he will go to the academy with Krantz, as if it were a common conversation. Cian, with a dark smile, replies, are you sure? Are you ready to spend days and nights side by? Margaret, furious with his words, shouts with hatred, you! How dare you say to me like that? In a rage, she rushes at Cian, but he easily raves her attack, remaining calm. Cian looks in her eyes with a mockery and coldly says, apologize, my lady, forcing her to freeze with anger. At this moment, a knight appears and says that the Duke demands Cian to meet, that Margaret is shocking. The knight calmly approaches Cian and says, let's go, they are waiting for us, letting us understand that the conversation is over. Margaret remains to stand alone, bewildered and humiliated when Ciana is led to the rest of the Duke. Cian turns and grins, enjoying her confused look, because now the forces are distributed. The knight goes nearby and thinks, I protect him on the Duke's personal order. No one dares to. Cian looks at the knight and thinks, knight, which does not include his head even before the Duchess. It's nice to see. The inscription appears on the screen. Chapter 2, Family Useless for the Child, reflecting the mood of what is happening. A knock on the door of the Duke's office, and Cian firmly says, let me in, preparing for a con. He goes inside and sees the father, the Duke of Verta, sitting at the table, immersed in paper. Cian tends his head and politely says, hello, father, for the first time talking to him after a long. The Duke calmly raises his head and says, sit down, showing that the conversation will be serious. In his thoughts, Cian thinks, for the world he has a different name, but for me he is just a father, Duke Willis. The Duke of Verta is called the Guard of the Continent, the legendary hero on whose shoulders the world holds. He is the one who once stopped the army of demons and saved people from destruction. With the help of strength and wisdom, the Duke led his people into battle, protecting the continent from evil. He died in a great battle against the army of the King of Demons to the very end of serving. But for Cian, this man was different. His memories of him are not as bright as others. Father always wanted only one thing, to bring the world to the continent, dreaming of rest forever. But Cian sees him as a man who himself chose his path, even if he was stupid and stubborn. The Duke carefully looks at his son and notes, you definitely followed the sword and dodged, not just like that. Cian is surprised, not understanding how his father noticed so quickly that he used a well-thought. The Duke recalls the moment of the battle. When the Cracker rushed at you, you followed the sword and left the blow. He continues, you even dodged your body to dodge completely. When did you learn to own a sword? Cian thinks, as always, he even sees what others do not notice, and understands that his father had a bit out. Cian answers calmly. I trained myself. Every night until no one saw, I honed movements. The father is surprised. You have never been interested in fencing. Why did you hide such skills? Cian looks aside and admits, I did not want someone to pay attention to me. I did not want to be noticed. The Duke continues, but despite this, you have laid out to the full to defeat the Krans. Why? Cian clenches his fists, recalling humiliations. I wanted to show what he is capable of and prove to myself, father asks. Didn't it be worth stopping after the victory, as if checking the true motives of the son? Cian thinks he's trying to understand what I'm capable of and what I achieve, but is silent. Finally, he says out loud, I wanted to prove that it is better than a man, even if we are connected by blood, for what this duel was for. The Duke smiles to Cian and says that his brilliant answer in the duel is worthy of a real. He laughs, admiring his son's hidden talent, and admits that he did not even expect such power from. It adds that one day Cian will be an excellent support for Askell, as a real assistant to an older. Cian is shocked by these words, because he is not going to become a shadow for Askell, whom he hates. Inside himself, he is angry and thinks, why should I become an assistant to Askell? Without hiding the inner protest, the Duke with a cunning smile says, but you are still not equal to your brother. You have a lot to come. Cian clenches his fists, restraining anger, realizing that his father still does not see his individual. The Duke changes the tone and says that he wants to reward Cian for a duel, but it will not be an ordinary trophy. He adds, if you want a reward, tell me what you want, giving Cian. Cian recalls hatred of Askell and thinks, then I will destroy everything that he achieved. He decides that he wants only one thing, to destroy everything that Askell tried to. Having gathered his thoughts, Cian replies, I want to be the front line, and calls everyone shock. Emily exclaims in horror, are you crazy? Do you understand what this place is? Against the background, an image of terrifying monsters appears, personifying the dangers of the battle. The map shows a place called Welias, the western border of the Empire, where endless battles are going on. It is there in the Liena Valley that the battles never stop, and the enemy is constant. Cian's father set a condition for him. If he wants to prove his strength, he must survive in this meet. Cian looks ahead with determination. I must become worthy to go through the valley in a month. He understands that he is still weaker than others, but he is ready to train and increase his strength at all costs. Cian clenches his fist, thinking, if I want to win, I must be stronger than ever, even despite the pain. Cian decides that he will begin to train right now to use his new body to the maximum. The girl suddenly bursts into the room and shouts loudly, Cian! Forcing him to startle. She confidently goes to him, squeezing his fist, and Cian understands that this visit is definitely not simple. Alice appears in front of him, strict and confident that Cian is dumb. Alice grabs him by the scruff of his scruff and angry, looking into the eyes. What are you allowing? She begins to shake him from side to side, demanding an explanation of why he wants to go to the front. Alice screams that if he counts on the title of family, then he completely went crazy. She presses her lips and looks at him with suspicion. Are you thinking of claiming the title? Cian calmly looks back and thinks that she does not understand his true goals. Alice takes out his sword and says, if you are serious, prove it in battle, calling him to a duel. Cian reflects that only half a day has passed since his fight with the Krantz, and he will again have a... He calmly goes into the arena and takes a sword, ready to show what it is. Alice fights seriously, but Cian retorts her attack with a smile. Alice is shocked by the fact that Cian was able to block her fast attack, which no one expected. Cian goes on a return attack, forcing Alice to retreat, and she is amazed to observe his confidence. He mockingly asks, are you really fighting seriously with your younger brother? Deftly repulsing her blows. Alice forcefully hatches the sword on top, but Cian holds the blade tightly and does not allow her to defeat him. She begins to suspect that this is not just luck, and for the first time looks at him as a strong. Alice grins, admitting that Cian is much better than she thought, but a new determination appears in her eyes. Cian feels that Alice was seriously angry and thinks, it seems that now I will have big. Alice attacks Ciana with a powerful series of strokes, tearing the air around the sword as if checking its limits. She smoothly goes to the side to avoid a response impact, moving quickly and deftly. Cian barely manages to raise the sword to protect, blocking its lightning attack at the last. Alice, with rage, continues the pressure, trying to knock Cian from a position and hit a vulnerable. Her eyes are expanding in surprise when Cian suddenly begins to fend off her series of blows. Cian looks at her with cold determination, does not intend to give in a step. It sharply pushes back, creating a distance in order to have time to recover. Using this chance, he instantly counterattacks, rushing forward with a quick series of... Cian evades her powerful blow, sliding along the arena at an incredible speed. He deftly lands, holding his balance to be prepared for her next. Cian breathes heavily, realizing that such a fight depletes him faster than he... Black energy flashes inside him, reminding that his forces are still incomplete. He mentally scolds himself for not yet capable of fully revealing his capability. To compensate for the lack of physical strength, He strengthens the sword by mania. Alice breathes heavily, preparing for a new spell, calling for the magic of the elements to attack. Xian is amazed, seeing how Alice prepares a spell of the 6th star, realizing how strong. He thinks in surprise that Alice is going to use magic, suitable for battle, not for life, but for. Xian looks at her in confusion, not understanding whether she is really going to kill him. Alice is confident in victory with a cold look, and she can see in her eyes she will not retreat. Xian, realizing that this is a serious battle, resolutely jumps up and prepares for the final. Xian, having invested all his strength, thinks that he can only hope for the success of his attack. With a run, he rushes forward, shrouded in bright blue energy, aiming right. With a sword sparkling with mana, he asks to himself, please. Alice also prepares a blow. Her whole strength is concentrated in a blade, ready to meet Xian. Both swords collide in a powerful explosion, and waves of energy diverge from the. At that moment, someone abruptly shouts, stop! But the fight is already in full swing. Xian, gritting his teeth, continues to crush despite Alice's resistance. They both put everything in the last blow, creating a dazzling flash that fills the arena. The knight Icon appears and reproaches Alice with reproach that she is overcurrent of the stick. Fighting with Alice recedes, and Icon blocks her path, showing that it is time. Xian smiles calmly, looking at Icon, and says that he had been waiting for his appearance for a long time. Alice was dumbfounded by how easily Xian took the situation, although the battle could cost him. Icon apologizes to Xian, admitting that Alice was too carried away and forgotten. Alice, biting her lip, admits that Xiana just wanted to experience before he went to the front. Xian looks at her with warmth and thinks, she is always like that. Tries with all his might for the sake of. For a moment he recalls, my sister, briefly but with warmth and pain in the heart. In the past, Alice was an elite knight with the highest estimates in all. Her beauty and talent were so great that she was called the daughter of the god. From an early age, she was taught fencing along with Aeschylus as the heir to the clan. But shortly after that, when she became a knight of the world, she was killed in battle, forever leaving the void in the heart of. Xian hugs Alice tightly, showing how much. Alice is surprised by his act, but gently answers the arms, clutching him to her. Icon recalls how Alice used to be the personal knight of the Duke and defended him. Icon says that he's now guarding Xian on the direct order of the Duke. Xian feels that Icon was following him since he left the Duke, so he thinks why his father decided to send Icon and why he hides it. Xian quietly asks Alice to convey to Icon to keep him imperceptible. Alice falls asleep right in his arms, tired after the battle. Xian gently looks at her, recalling her sister's childhood. And the night drops to the castle, and Xian stands by the window thinking about the inscription appears, Chapter 3. The useless child of the Verta clan. The next day, Alice returns to the academy, leaving Xian alone. Xian trains alone, trying to stay in his arms, but trembles with fatigue. Trying to finish the exercise, he breathes heavily and thinks about his. Xian falls to the floor, exhausted but with a firm desire to become stronger. He is sitting with wrapped hands and recalls that he trained so for 2 weeks. The servant reports that he received a package from. Emily looks at the parcel with horror, seeing a strange potion. Inside lies a rare potion designed to enhance the body. Xian looks at the bubble, preparing to drink it to become stronger. Xian understands that the potion actually weakens Manu and the strength of the one who drinks him. Although everyone thinks that he decides to drink him, knowing the truth from the past, and smiles at Emily, assuring that everything is in order. Xian calmly drinks the potion, recalling how the only one who knew what it was in a pack. In front of him stands a strange purple dish, and he recalls how once it made his heart freeze. Xian quickly takes the bowl and resolutely drinks all the contents to the bottom. Suddenly his face is distorted from an incredibly acute taste, but he screams, it's delicious. Emily looks at him in surprise when he gets up and says that he will come out for a walk. Xian leaves the room, thinking whether the potion worked as he expected. He walks along the forest path, reflecting on his strength and how long he is here. Xian raises his head to the sky, thinking that a week has already passed since he appeared in this place. He smiles, recalling that he specially came here to be alone. In the forest among the trees, he recalls the legend of an ancient temple hidden in these mountains. Xian sits down by the river thinking about Manette, but admits that so far the revelation has not. He sharply wounds his hand, squeezing it, and watches how blood flows, thinking that this is part of the test. Redman arises from the blood, and he understands that the process of activation of force begins. Xian looks at this process and thinks, what can I do right now? He continues to pour mana into the ground, creating around him an explosion of magical energy. Xian stands in the center of the raging stream of power, deciding not to. He confidently says to himself, it's time to go, is completely ready for what is waiting ahead. Climbing the slope, he sees that the place where he came has changed the last time, and this place, special. Before Xian appears the image of an ancient temple dedicated to the god of light. Xian recalls that all the knowledge of this temple was erased after the war with God Demon. He looks at the destroyed temple, realizing that the war that happened 300 years ago destroyed. Xian is surprised that this place was generally preserved, because it was believed that it does not exist. He notices a staircase in front, leading to a luminous altar, and thinks, on the altar there is a sparkling sword, as if waiting for its new owner. The name of the new chapter appears, Chapter 4, Owner of a Demonic Sword. Time goes far back, 999 to the founding of the Empire. People finally expelled the army of the King of Demons from the lands of Welias but the demons turned out to be stronger than people. And the price of this victory, people found ancient relics called the weapons of the gods to defeat the enemy. One of these artifacts was a sword that was sealed and filled with light. Cian thinks that in the future he will die a miserable death if he does not change anything. He looks at the sword, which, according to fate, was supposed to go to his brother Ask. Touching the sword, Cian hopes that he can change the purpose that has already been written. But despite all efforts, the sword does not react, and Cian is disappointed. Nothing happens. Cian recalls how his brother always exceeded him, and this leads him into despair. Getting angry, he kicks the pedestal of the sword and says, "It ruined my mood." Approaching the center of the hall, he decides to simply end the case and leave here. But suddenly Cian notices something strange on the floor, which may be a key. Cian looks at the altar's strange shadow and thinks that at first, it seems just a shadow of a sword. But he quickly realizes that this is impossible because this shadow is not. Red energy begins to flow into the ground, opening the hidden passage deep into the temple. A dark path is opened in front of him, filled with mystical energy, as if calling. Cian understands that this path leads to another hall hidden behind the altar of light. He carefully peeps out from behind the wall, checking if there is a... At the far end of the room, he notices an altar with a black sword shrouded in a red aura. Stepping closer, Cian grabs the hilt of the sword, feeling the power emanating from it. He pulls out a demonic sword that begins to react to his touch. Red energy wraps the sword when Cian completely pulls him out of the... He smiles, holding the sword in his hands, as if he met an old friend. "Good morning, Cian lifts the sword, waving them to feel his strength, and he looks at the sword with crazy joy, thinking that he wants to defeat someone right now. At this time, the voice of the sword begins to say, "Are you not afraid, child?" Cian squeezes the sword stronger, answering the provocation. "Do you think I do not know what I'm going to?" With a black smile, the sword creates a whirlwind of mana around them, as if preparing to capture Cian. The dark essence living in the sword hisses, "To regret too late." Energy covers Cian, and the voice continues, "Now your body belongs to..." Cian cries, trying to resist the power of the sword, but the wave of power absorbs him. The dark essence mocks, saying that before he was not so reckless, hinting at changes in Cian. Cian grinks, holding the sword, and the demon inside is surprised. "How can you touch me?" He demonstrates the strength of the sword, from which dark energy with a purple light breaks. The sword girl is trying to attack, but Cian easily raves her blow. She throws him back with force, but Cian retains her balance. The mysterious girl in black looks at him and asks, "Who are..." The silhouette of Eru bursts out of the sword, as if confirming the inheritance. The judge raises his hand, giving the signal to the beginning of the duel, and the tension is in the air. The girl notices a familiar aura and asks why the energy of air is coming from. Cian confidently replies, "Yes, I am the heir to Eru," forcing her to be surprised. She maliciously clenches his fists, not wanting to believe in his words, and hisses, "You are just a..." The fight continues. Swords collide, and magic is scattered with sparks. Cian squeezes the sword, thinking that in words it is impossible to do, and is preparing for battle. The girl accepts the battle, attacking him with renewed vigor, deciding that she has no... She jumps into the air, preparing a strong blow, but promises to fight easier. Cian notices her movement and carefully monitors, preparing for a response. On a black background, the inscription, "Control of the Demonic Sword," appears as the beginning of a new... The girl rushes down, attacking the sword, and screams with tension. Cian calmly suggests, "Why don't you recognize me as the owner of the sword while I'm kind?" She fury answers, rushing to the attack. "How dare you!" Cian evades, and then counterattacks using a new technique of a demonic sword. He continues to calmly stand with a sword, saying again, "Control of a demonic sword." The creature in the shade is inclined in front of Cian and finally says, "I accept you, man." Cian is trying to start the sword control spell, but the creature already calls it Master. After the victory over the sword, Cian leaves the hall, thinking that here he had finished. He goes along the corridor with a sword in his hand and thinks that it is time to The demon inside the sword finally rejoices, finally ended up at large, and draws dark energy out of the... A dark creature with pink eyes laughs and shouts, "Fine." It begins to pester to Cian, asking his name. "Hey, master, how to call you?" Cian calmly replies, Cian Wirt, which surprises the creature. The demon of the sword is surprised at the choice of Eru. "Has Eru chose a child like you?" Cian calmly confirms, "Yes, in a past life I was..." The demon asks in bewilderment, "What does in a past life?" Cian calmly adds, "I've already died." The demon is silent, dumbfounded by this information. Cian picks up another sword in his hands, Thinking that now he has 20 chances, he cuts a magic item from a pedestal and the demon looks at it and Cian calmly explains that he wants to collect as many artifacts as he grins and looks at the demon saying, who knows, maybe. Meanwhile, a wagon rushes along the road heading for the castle. The wheels of the cart are knocking along the road, raising clouds. When the wagon stops, Cian comes out of it in new elegant clothes, looking around. The spirit of the sword is surrendered and answers, I admit. Cian looks at the spirit of the sword, which is finally broken, and asks, well, Cian is going to complete control of the demonic sword, but the spirit calls it a... Now that he has achieved his, Cian decides that the time has come to leave. He goes along the corridor, holding a sword in his hand, and thinks that he lingered here for too long. The demonic spirit inside the sword comes to life, rejoicing, how long I have not felt fresh air. A black shadow with a pink flame laughs, shouting, freedom! The creature begins to pester to Cian, having fun asking, what is your name? Cian calmly replies, Cian. The demon is surprised that it was Cian now that is master, because Eru chose an ordinary child. Cian confirms that in a past life he was already dying, saying, when the demon is perplexed, Cian calmly adds, I died once. The creature inside the sword is silent, not believing in what he heard, and look. Cian in response takes a strange sword, as if checking his strength, and observe. The sword begins to radiate bright light, causing a surprise in the demon. What are you? Cian stands calmly and looks at the sword, not paying attention to questions. He puts his sword on his shoulder and grins. Who knows, maybe he will come in handy. Meanwhile, a wagon rides on the road heading for the duchy. The wheels of the cart are knocking on the stones, lifting dust. And now the wagon stops. Cian comes out of it in a new form, thinking, time really flies. Cian smiles and says that he also wants to feel what it is like. A real battle. Elkin looks at him seriously and says that for a duel he should choose the most younger. Cian recalls how Krantz ran away from him when he only saw, and grins. Elkin sighs heavily, thinking that it will not. Cian smiles and says that if Elkin insists, then he is ready to. Elkin takes out the sword, taking the call, and says that Cian thanks Elkin for the chance and says that there's another request. He looks violently and asks not to talk about this fight to his father. Elkin gloomily says, this is an order, making it clear that the duel will. Cian asks in surprise, not expecting such an answer. At this moment, his gaze becomes focused. His eyes are full of determination. Both rush at each other. Blades are faced with force. Alkin is amazed at the power of the blow and thinks that this is too much for a 10-year-old child. He barely manages to defend himself, noting the speed of Cian too. Cian deftly evades, tossing himself into the air to attack from above. Alkin is lost for a moment, not understanding how Cian was being. He watches every movement intensely, not having time to monitor. The blades collide again, and a powerful wave diverges from the blow. Cian goes into the frontal attack, not inferior to an adult. The last frame shows Cian's sword ready to deliver a decisive blow. His eyes burn with determination. Cian fights with Ilkin. His attack at high speed breaks through. He understands that so far he cannot defeat Ulkin and stops the attack. Cian thanks Ilkin for training and says that he helped well. Ulkin is surprised by the power of Cian and thinks that he did not expect this from the young master. Cian smiles, and Ulkin notes to himself how much he grew up. Ulkin recalls that he already realized that a great potential was hidden in Cian. At this moment, a huge fiery creature appears, roaring into the... Cian calmly stands in front of the monster, preparing for... The monster begins to attack, raising clubs of dust and land. Cian is preparing and thinking that the monster is getting closer. He confidently looks at the enemy, analyzing the situation. The monster's eyes are full of rage and fire. It is aimed at Cian. The monster rushes on the attack, breaking the... Cian understands that it is difficult for him to fight such a monster, but is not going to retreat. He decides that you need to complete the battle as quickly as possible while there is strength. The monster with fire on the body goes on the attack, and Cian prepares its attack. Cian collects all power and rushes forward for a decisive blow. He strikes a strong blow. The monster lures from his attack. At this time, knights watching the battle enter the battle on the other hand. One of the commanders smiles, looking at what is happening, clearly pleased with the result. Cian finishes the monster, thinking that the battle was like hunting. He understands that if he showed all the power, he would be considered. Father praises Cian, saying that he impressed him with his ability. The father adds that he is waiting for him on the battlefield, hinting at new trials. Cian thanks his father, showing respect, but inside remains. He mentally calls a demonic sword, waiting for... The sword manifests itself, ironically asking why it was called. There is a dispute with the sword. It requires blood to it. The sword begs to give only one sip to become stronger. Cian looks strictly at him, but promises, don't worry, you will... The sword becomes active, wrapping around Cian's hand, preparing for battle. Cian confidently says, wait, soon you will get what you want. The sword is furious. Then it was necessary to call me before, when the massacre began. Suddenly a huge OGR appears, which immediately rushes on the... The soldiers notice the monster and hurry to... Cian's father commands to build protection and kill the monster at all costs. The army captain orders to use the shackles of salvation to detain the enemy. Soldiers release a powerful light blow directed at the ogre. The monster only slows down a little, He continues to move forward. In the crowd, someone in a panic shouts, "Grandmother!" Not believing his eyes. Father shouts, "Attack!" And the soldiers rush into battle. Cian fights with a monster, applying a powerful blow with a sword. His opponent fiercely attacks, but Cian deftly evades. A huge monster publishes a cry of rage, preparing for a new. Cian deftly beats off the blow and retses a reciprocal attack. The monster is injured, but still continues. Cian sits on a horse, preparing for a Emily calls him, worried about the young master. Cian, smiling, says he missed this place. One of the knights asks Cian what to be on the father explains that you never know when you die. Cian, smiling, promises to remember this instruction. The father recalls that such battles here are, the battles go 3-4 times a day, and everyone has a plan of action. Experienced knights serve as the basis of all attacks and protective lines. Warriors destroy all the monsters trying to break. Cian thinks that his post is the safest. He understands that because of strict guards, he will not be able to feed the demonics. Thinking about the rules, he's upset that he will have to wait for. Cian notices how Emily fussing and asks what she is doing. Cian alarms that they can die at any time. Emily screams at him in response, reproaching that without her he could. She says that she cannot leave because then there will be no one to take care of him. Emily looks at him in despair, realizing that no one would understand. The servant calls to have dinner, distracting from the conversation. Cian thoughtfully stands alone by the bed. He irritably thinks whether to drive Emily. The name of the new chapter appears. Limi Valley 1. Emily lies in bed and pretends to be sleeping. Cian checks the collected things, preparing for the exit. Emily asks if he woke her. Cian replies, "Yes, it seems to have woken up." Emily jokes that the Duke would be proud of him if he found out how he was trying. Cian is going to leave and asks Emily to do business as usual. Emily reluctantly agrees, continuing. Cian understands that it will be difficult to get unnoticed. But outside, the sounds of the night guard around the territory are heard. Cian realizes that if it does not leave now, later there will be no possibility. The name of its next course pops up. Fog. Third technique, the descent of the fog. Cian applies secretive equipment and goes into red fog. At the same time, an evil monster appears in the valley, which he expects. Cian understands that this is the perfect place to use the. He activates the sword, releasing a stream of red energy. Karam, in anticipation, longs for blood and asks the owner to allow him to kill. A huge monster rushes on the attack. Cian allows Karam to act as he wants. The sword emits a powerful wave, destroying. Cian easily evades the attack of the monster. The name of the technique appears. The Sword of the Fog, a storm. Karam's sword is losing a powerful blow, tearing the enemy. The wolf ogre dies from the blow of the sword. Cian removes the sword and calmly drinks. His face is transformed with pleasure with a sword in his hands. Cian says they will continue training until dawn. It grins, full of determination to continue. New monsters appear on the horizon. Cian watches the night valley full of enemies. At this time, in the Imperial Palace, someone is concerned about the situation. The princess offers to return, but her accompanying refuses. She reminds him that as a princess is obliged to accompany her. The princess strictly says that they no longer raise this topic. The girl recalls that she heard rumors about the youngest son of the Duke of Verta, who was at the front. She is surprised that the Duke took his youngest son with him, because they are of the. The guy explains that Cian himself insisted on going to war. The girl turns away irritably, pretending to be not interested in listening to it. The servant obediently agrees and calls the girl. The princess thinks, looking down, as if something worried about her. The guy recalls that the name of the youngest son of the Duke is Cian. The princess asks in surprise to make sure if she understood. She once again clarifies what kind of Vert it was talking about, as if she is familiar with her name. At this time, the monster spreads the wings, preparing for the attack. The Duke gives the order to check if everything is in order, and are there. Cian stands among the dead monsters, holding a sword, and examines the battlefield. The Duke orders his people to return to the camp. He looks thoughtfully at the battlefield, reflecting on something of it. Cian comes closer. His steps sound confident. He wipes blood from the sword, sighing heavily after the battle. The Duke asks his son how he copes with life. Cian replies that he studies a lot of new things every day. The Duke smiles and says that he is proud of his son for the exposure. Cian looks at his father with surprise, not expecting to hear such words. Cian listens to his father, who says he wants to talk to him in the morning in the tent. He is surprised because he never saw his father so kind. A new chapter called Lima Valley 2. Loud explosions are heard in the mountains, breaking the silence. The monster attacks with rage, but Cian confidently reflects it. A new threat appears in front of him, another demonic creature. Cian tells Karam that he will not allow him to prevail, recalling who is the main one. The dust takes off after a powerful blow, hiding the battlefield. Karam persuades him to give him freedom, but Cian holds him under. Cian thinks that in a month he became stronger at the front line, but this is not enough. He recalls how he drank the blood of countless monsters, but he feels that there is still little. New monsters appear on the horizon, threatening to destroy everything. Cian raises the sword and allows the Karama to go to the discharge to fight for real. There is an inscription, Technique of Fog, 9-form demonic manifestation. Cian rushes into battle, striking destructive blows. The monster reveals the mouth, but Cian is ready to destroy it. Cian shouts that he will smash everything into shreds, full of fighting ardor. He attacks with rage, tearing the enemy into... The next technique is the Sword of the Fog, 8 trembling petals, and magic begins to open. Around the pink energy flashes, ready to... The monster with a bloodied mouth falls dead, struck by a powerful blow. The bloody blade flashes through the darkness, leaving behind the trace of destruction. On the ground lies a mutilated paw of a monster recently killed. Soldiers and knights examine the place of battle, surprised at the power that destroyed the monster. One of the knights orders to begin the investigation and examination of the surroundings. The body of the monster lying on the ground is dotted with the wounds familiar to the sword. The Duke thoughtfully examines the battlefield. As if recalling, he begins to understand that he had already seen such traces earlier. Knights with torches continue to examine the cave, running into a new body. The spectacle of the defeated huge worm, a deadly worm, opens in front of them. They are in shock, thinking who could defeat such a monster. The Duke suspects that there is a certain mysterious organization behind this. At this time, the inscription, "A manifestation of a demonic sword," pops up. The screen shows how the sword masters the hero's body, allowing you to show true power. But the hero understands that he should lose control. The sword will completely subjugate his body. He smiles, well aware of the danger that this sword carries. Lying in bed, he thinks that only the blood of monsters saved him after a fierce battle. He feels pain in the whole body, but rejoices that now his body is strong. The hero realizes how far he has advanced over the past month. Karam mockingly says that the hero looks like a child, but has long ceased to. The level with which you control me is too high for the first time. You are not one of those who first picked up a sword. So you really died once, right? Are you a regressor? Isn't it enough to say that I was already dying? How is it obvious if you yourself did not explain anything? However, it was probably not easy to kill someone like you. You killed the owner of the sword, Karam, right? And I feel the echoes of that battle in you. Your goal is revenge. But if I notice at least the slightest doubt or weakness, I will swallow you. Do not build a connoisseur for myself. She has not changed. The same as in my past. What kind of noise? Young master, you woke? Yes, Emily. At the entrance to the valley, they found the corpse of a monster. She talks about the dead. Emily asks in surprise, not understanding what it is. Cian clarifies whether they said something about him or strange incident. Alkin approaches them, turning to Cian by... Alkin reports that the Duke wants to talk to his son. Cian thinks that now he will not be able to carry the body of the murdered monster with him. He recalls how the soldiers suddenly appeared near the battlefield. Cian is angry because he planned to live calmly before entering the academy. He enters the tent to his father and understands that he will guess who killed the monster. Father calmly confirms his name, preparing for a conversation. Cian strains, thinking how to answer if his father asks about yesterday. Father asks him to sit down, watching. Cian, lowering his head, is clearly nervous. He does not know what to answer his father's possible questions. Cian silently stands in front of his father, not knowing how to start a conversation. He understands that the conversation will definitely affect yes. The father again repeats the request to sit down, not taking his eyes off his son. Cian tightly takes his eyes to the side. One question is spinning in Cian's head. What to say in just... The title of the new chapter appears. Chapter 8. Visit of the Emperor. Father directly asks what Cian did last. The prince tells Cian that he wants to talk to him about something important and asks to come to his tent. Cian is surprised because his father had never been so kind with him before and agrees with an easy The title of the new chapter appears. Chapter 7. Valley of Lima. Loud blows are heard in the dark cave. Someone jumps down, preparing for the battle. Cian, with a sword in his hands, rushes on the attack on the monster, preparing to strike. He pierces the monster with his sword and he begins to crumble to dust. Cian talks with the sword, holding it tightly in his hand, and says that he is not going to allow the sword to control him. A black haze begins to rise from the body of the murdered monster, and the sword says that he is waiting for even more blood. Cian looks coldly at the disappearing monster while the sword whispers that he wants to drink even more blood. Cian thinks that more than a month has passed since he arrived at the front. He examines the battlefield, dotted with the bodies of the dead demons, but understands that this is not enough for his strength. The monster rushes at Cian with a huge mouth, but he looks at him confidently, preparing for the next battle. Cian is preparing for an attack. His sword begins to glow with red light, and he says that he's going to go to the inscription, Fog Sword, 9th form appears, a manifestation of a demonic sword. Cian cuts the monster, shrouded in demonic light in a scale not showing a drop of... The sword in his hand glows with a bloody aura, while Cian is preparing with cold determination for the next blow. The monster rushes on the attack, wide opening his mouth, but Cian calmly meets it. Cian with rage pierces the monster through, crushing his body into parts. The inscription Fog Sword, 8 fluttering petals appears, demonstrating the power of the attack. Huge pink flashes in the form of petals break the monster, leaving behind. On the battlefield, they are trumpeted into the horn, announcing the arrival of an important person. Everyone is preparing to meet High. Lord Wellius, standing on one knee, welcomes the arrived emperor and shows him reverence for the audience. The emperor, approaching a horse, welcomes an old friend named Villar. showing that there is friendly relations between them. The emperor jumps off the horse with calm, and everyone around freezes, watching him in anticipation. The emperor comes closer, and with a warm smile tells Villart that he is not so official, because they have known each other for a long time. The emperor recognizes in a conversation about the child and begins to be interested. Is it really the young heir about whom rumors? Prince Vert bows and says that he is glad to imagine his youngest son, showing Kian. The emperor, with surprise and praise, says that he did not expect to see such a young guy in such a harsh place, because not every child can withstand such conditions. Kian thinks that he would like to just remain inconspicuous now, not to attract attention, especially to such an important person. Thoughts about the past life pop up in his head when he, being locked in the mansion, could not even see the emperor. He only heard about such visits. The emperor, with a smile, says that he would like to imagine another important person whom he brought. Because of the screen, the girl's legs are shown, which should soon appear before the audience, causing the interest of Cyan. A girl in luxurious clothes enters the stage and appears as the fifth princess of the empire, examining everyone with a strict look. Serious and a little cold, Aaron Severius says his full name, making it clear that she is not simple. Cyan repeats her name in surprise to himself, immediately recalling all the rumors and stories about the tragic fifth princess, who was called the Cyan's father tells his son that he should now accompany the princess, showing the seriousness of this assignment. Cyan is dumbfounded. He cannot believe that he will have to accompany the Princess Aurora in itself, because this is too responsible for him. The father calmly explains to Cyan that there is no need to be so surprised. All that is required is just to make her company. Pointing to the map, he adds that Cyan will see her again at the academy when he goes there, because they will study together. Cyan recalls a past life and how then, at the academy, he saw the princess from afar. But now everything is different. The father says that she needs to be accompanied now, and Cyan agrees, realizing that he has. Cyan looks into the distance with a serious expression on his face, thinking that he does not want to fulfill the task assigned to him, but there is no choice. He understands that his father entrusted this for a reason. He has good reasons, even if Cyan is not to his liking. Father, looking at the emperor, probably hopes that Cyan will be able to establish the same trusting relationship with him as their families. Cyan and Aaron are standing to the back. Their faces are concentrated, because they realize that difficult trials are waiting for them ahead. Walking along the blood-red valley, Cyan thinks that he cannot reveal to everyone his knowledge about the future, since this can change a lot. The magnificent procession moves along the valley. The soldiers surround them, protecting them, but Cyan does not feel safe. Aaron is trying to start a conversation, but Cyan closes in himself, answering her briefly, not wanting conversations now. Aaron, looking around, asks Cyan about the river, which looks like a real blood river, and he confirms, this is the river of blood. They come closer to the river, and Cyan explains that this is a stream that crosses the entire valley painted in red due to many battles. The dead bodies of demonic animals float in the river, and Cyan notes that everyone in the army knows about this terrible place. He explains Aaron that the river serves for animals and a source of water and a place to wash, but it is better not to go there. It is too. Aaron, in horror, is interested in where this river leads, and Cyan, grinning, says that it goes straight to the kingdom of demons. Shocked, Aaron exclaims that demons live there, not believing that they are so close to this terrible place. Cyan explains that if you go along the river, you can get directly to the demonic king, but laughs, because no one in their right mind will do this. He grinks to himself, realizing that he even had a little fun to watch Aaron and suddenly they hear a strange sound and see a bright light that begins to spill across the sky. Cyan and Aaron raise their heads, looking at the light, and Cyan notes that this signal means the appearance of demonic. He frowns and says that yellow light always portends the attack of monsters, preparing Aaron for a possible. Aaron, in a panic, cries, realizing that dangerous animals may appear right here next to them. The commander of the knights shouts the order to protect the emperor, because the appearance of monsters is a threat that can cost everyone a life. The emperor calmly tells Villart not to be so gloomy, showing confidence despite the danger. The emperor confidently takes out the sword, saying that he is not going to stand aside. He himself wants to take. Villart sighs heavily but agrees, realizing that it is useless to argue with the emperor. The emperor announces to everyone that he will also participate in the battle, giving courage to his troops. The father turns to Cyan, ordering him to join the battle despite his son's age. Cyan calmly replies that he will fight, although he admits that he's only studying, but is ready to test. Aaron, in a panic, screams, demanding to take her with him, not wanting to stay away from danger. One of the knights is shocked by the words of the princess, recalling that she herself said that they were peers. Cyan, looking at Aaron, strictly says that people die on the battlefield, and this is not a place for game. Cyan looks at her intention, realizing that the dispute can drag on, but does not want her to take risks. Elkin, noticing what is happening, reports that the camp is attacking and enemies are already moving in there. The knight gently asks the princess to return to a safe place, realizing that the situation is becoming dangerous. Irene, despite the warnings, angrily states that he is not going to leave, considering this a manifestation of weakness. Cayenne grabs her by the shoulders and at point blank says that people will die due to her stubbornness if she interferes. He asks with cold rage whether she is ready to take responsibility for all these lives. Aren, shocked by the words of Cayenne, begins to understand the seriousness of the situation. Cayenne turns away and says that if she wants to cry, let her return to the camp, showing her firmness. They go towards the front, leaving Aren in a thought out, one of the first serious showdowns for her. At this moment, a strange light is visible in the distance, foreshadowing the beginning of the attack, and everyone freezes in anticipation. In the last picture, the enemies attack, the arrows fly into the sky, and the soldiers are preparing for the battle, and Cyan and his father are looking at the battlefield. The army commander loudly orders the soldiers not to retreat and keep the system to the end, despite the onslaught of a huge number of demonic monsters. His voice is determined. He inspires his people to fight to the last. The warriors who responded to the commander's order raise their swords and with all their might throw themselves on the attack. Their weapon shines in the glows of the battle, preparing to smash the enemy, despite fear and danger. Villart, with a harsh face and a sword in his hand, screams to the rest of the knights. They are obliged to protect the emperor at all costs. He is ready to rush into the very bake to save his master. The battle is in full swing. Knights and warriors fight monsters, but many fall under the blows of claws and teeth. The battlefield is filled with screams, pain and fear, blood. The story begins about the powerful Emperor Dione, who managed to unite the empire and lead it to prosperity. He stands at the top of power, but behind him there are many enemies and intrigue. The second wife of the emperor, Cassandra, dressed in dark clothes, enters the stage. She had a great influence at the court, although many were afraid and hated her. The courtiers gather in the hall, discussing the fate of other people. Among them are those who decide who to live and who die. They are immersed in intrigues and power games, far from worries of ordinary people. Before us appears Erin Severus, the fifth princess born of a simple concubine. Despite her origin, she wears a proud look and a magnificent outfit, although it remains an outcast among the nobility. People always treated Erin as a stranger, despising her for dirty blood. For them, she was not a real princess, but rather a reminder of the weakness of the emperor who took the concubine. But Erin did not allow himself to break. With an icy gaze full of pride, she continued to hold her head high, not paying attention to ridicule and the bias. Despite all the humiliations, she did not stop studying and training to prove that she was worthy of a place among royal blood. She tried to surpass even those who considered themselves above. However, all her efforts turned into a tragedy. Envious people and enemies accused her of treason, having a conspiracy to get rid of her forever. She was alone against the whole yard. Her opponents dissolved rumors that Aaron is not a man, but a demon in human form. These terrible inventions quickly dispersed the palace, increasing hatred of the princess. The dark figure of a demonic sword recalls how human malice can destroy even the purest and most strong people. He, as if he compares Aaron with his own. The hero, watching all this, understands that politics is not heroic feats but dirty intrigues where people are ready to betray for the sake of power. For him, this is an unpleasant discovery, but on the battlefield, the soldiers are again preparing for protection. One of the soldiers releases a bright ray of light to try to stop the advancing monsters, demonstrating the miracles of combat magic. The emperor, despite his age, personally enters into battle. His face is full of determination. He picks up his sword and is ready to fight to show an example to his soldiers. In the words of the holy lightning spell, the emperor calls on a powerful stream of lightning, which collapses on demons, destroying them in whole rows and illuminating the battle. Starring the sky breaks the sky, piercing the monsters which a second ago seemed invincible. Everyone freezes watching the great. Observing the destructive attack, the narrator emphasizes that the emperor is one of the strongest magicians, capable of eating a whole army of monsters with one. The emperor demonstrates his power using magic to crush demonic creatures. His strength is inspired by fear of enemies and confidence to the allies, because he's one of the strongest magicians. The hero calmly reflects that for the emperor to defeat the demonic being of the average rank is not a problem. Next to him, the Karami sword soars, making fun. A new chapter is opened entitled The Emperor's Visit, 2, promising to reveal the secrets of palace intrigues and events related to. In a chamber environment, drinks are served to facilitate an important conversation. Villar and the emperor, sitting at the same table, are ready to discuss serious issues on which the fate of the emperor notes that he had not been sitting with Villar for a long time over a bowl of wine, and that he was a little lonely. Despite their high status, such moments remind of simple human friendship. Nevertheless, the emperor is going to business, saying that he was disturbed by the events in the empire, the murder of the nobility, the growing tension, and the discontent of ordinary people. The map of the empire with blood spots symbolizes the wave of murders. It became dangerous, even for high-ranking persons, and this poses a threat of the entire stability. Villard agrees, confirming that the situation is really alarming. He understands that the emperor expects his actions to eliminate the problem. The emperor reports that all those killed were corrupt officials, and some black fogs who leave traces at the crime scene were involved in the murder. Villard is deeply conceived, as if sorting out the possible causes, but so far he does not express his guesses aloud. He suggests that the followers of the Black Fog began to act again and can pose a threat to much larger than ordinary killers. The emperor tells Villard to carefully investigate the situation, as this may have serious consequences for the whole empire. Despite doubts, the emperor says that he cannot just sit back and observe how the discontent of the people is growing. Even if you have to remove the garbage, Villard, left alone, looks at an empty chair, pondering what he heard. He understands that the problem can be much deeper than it seems at first glance. He carefully clarifies with the emperor whether he does not mean that the fifth princess, Aranin, is involved in everything, because it is around her that clouds have been thickened recently. The emperor replies that many accuse Arin, but in his opinion, this is just an occasion for attacks. However, he cannot but take into account that her situation can aggravate the situation. He adds that to protect the empire, he had to suppress excitement, exposing Arin in a bad light to hold power. The emperor admits that perhaps someone is trying to use Arin for their own purposes, substituting it to start a conspiracy against. He sadly asks Villard to take care of the princess if something happens to him suddenly. This conversation speaks of his secret alarm for the future. The emperor gives a clear order. If a war or conspiracy begins, Villard is obliged to defend Arin at all costs. Even if for this, you have to act against the will of the nobility itself. The hero thanks for something important. His face is serious, because the words "thank you" is not an empty phrase. It rains outside the window, creating a gloomy and calm atmosphere before an important conversation. Emily is surprised that there are no additional words for the hero's gratitude. She clearly wants to hear something more. The hero, standing in the doorway, answers Emily a little bewildered, not expecting her to wait for. Emily indignantly recalls that he had just spent the princess itself, but behaved as if it were an ordinary walk. Confused, she jokes that with such an attitude, the hero will never marry, but this is only a way to hide his real. The hero, about to go to training, says that he trusts her to care about business until Emily, looking after him, worries because it rains on the street, and it is difficult to train in such weather, but he seems to be not paying it. Suddenly, a figure appears from the shadow, and the hero in fright asks, "Who?" Princess Irina appears, asking the hero where he goes in such weather, showing that she is interested in his society. Arin, a little embarrassedly, clarifies whether he can devote time to her, even if he's busy with his own business. Emily, with a shock, recognizes the princess to the guest, not believing that she was standing right in front of the tent. The heroes notice that it continues to rain on the street, and everything around is immersed in anticipation. The hero asks Arin how long she is here, and hears with surprise in response about him. He is directly interested in why she came, showing that he feels something important behind. Arin is silent, as if he thinks about how to say what really works. The hero asks Emily to leave them alone, showing that the conversation will be important and personal. Emily, a little moody, but cheerfully agrees, making fun that he leaves them together, hinting at a romantic connotation. The hero and Arin remain alone in the tent, a tense silence filled with expectation. The hero ironically thinks that time is alone with a 10-year-old girl sounds strange, but he feels that this is more than more. The princess apologizes for what happened earlier, feeling guilty for behaving not like a real princess. The hero calmly replies that she has nothing to worry about, and that he would have done the same if he had been in her place. The princess admits that the hero is more mature than she is, and his calm surprises her. The hero at that moment reflects that she has a fairly firm and complex character. The princess is gaining courage and trying to offer to become friends, but at the last moment confusedly apologizes. With a drooping look, she admits that she is not sure whether she can be useful for him, doubting herself. But the hero immediately answers coldly that if she came to make friends, she better leave. Hearing this, the princess is upset because, in fact, she just wanted to establish a good relationship. She suddenly asks if he thinks that she's just an empty shell of the princess who is controlled. The hero is silent, thinking about how to answer her words correctly, but looks at her without condemnation. Understanding that the conversation does not work out, The princess politely apologizes for the she admits that she hoped to at least talk to him, possibly find support. The hero says that she does not look like that very Sir Arcala, hinting that she has her. At this moment, he realizes that she had just uttered something important, and the princess abruptly grabs his clothes, showing that the conversation is very important to her. She, in a panic, asks how he knows the name of her brother. Dumbfounded by this, the princess explains that Archel, her brother, tried to teach her to be a princess, but did not believe in her. The hero is surprised to hear the word instructed, because for him it sounds strange in this. At this time, Arcella himself, who controls the puppets, watching what is happening. Archel, watching the conversation, understands that their meeting launched a chain of events that had already begun as soon as they met. The princess recalls the order to send the killers for her, which makes her think about her safety. The hero looks at the suddenly opened door in amazement when someone is in a hurry to him. The servant bursts into the tent and calls the young owner with a cry to warn about. Emily, in a panic, screams to the hero so that he immediately realizes. The hero is concentrated, but quickly reacts to a warning, preparing for us. Somewhere nearby, an explosion is heard, and the whole earth shudders when the enemy. The guards are shocked that the explosion came right on the tent of the young master. Emily, in despair, tries to find the hero, afraid that something had happened to him. With tears in her eyes, she calls the young master in horror, hoping that he survived. The soldier's voice echoes her, shouting loudly the name of the hero, hoping. A new chapter begins, promising to reveal further attack events. The landscape of the camp under the night sky looks frighteningly empty after the emperor asks in shock, not believing what he heard about the attack. The advisor explains that the demonic animals of the highest rank attacked the back rows of the camp. Officers understand that it is urgent to save the princess who could get under the blow. They resolutely accept the order to immediately go to the back rows of the camp. The emperor, in alarm, realizes that the princess was exactly where the attack occurred. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the hero watches the battle with huge monsters. He notes with anxiety among the enemies of both death worms and ogres, which should not have been in these places. The hero understands that the situation has changed, and now the monsters even reach the camp, which speaks of an impending threat. The hero sits in thought, blaming himself for what happened, thinking if it all began because of him. Emily rushes to the hero with tears, rejoicing that he is alive, and swears again not. A powerful explosion shakes the earth, showing that the battle continues somewhere near. The hero thinks that in the past he even killed the king of demons, and now he was not afraid of this threat. The hero reassures the princess, assuring the knights from the camp will surely cope. The princess blames himself for what happened, thinking that if she had not come here, there would have been. Knights come up to her, assuring that their duty is to protect it, because they are the knights of the empire. One of the knights with determination says that he is ready to die in order to protect her. The hero notices danger and shouts to everyone to move away. The knight apologizes in confusion, not having time to react to the attack. A huge monster wounds one of the knights and he falls to the ground. A giant monster appears, rising menacingly over everyone. The hero covers the princess, warning her to stay away from the enemy. The monster stomps in their direction and it becomes clear that he chose the goal. The hero understands that the monster is hunting precisely for him. The hero orders to distract the monster in order to have time to take the princess to a safe place. Emily agrees to help and is ready to follow the hero. The hero notes that one of the knights is in no hurry to leave and jokes above him. The monster growls loudly, preparing to attack and threatens everyone. The hero resolutely attacks the monster, showing that he is not going to hide despite the danger. Cyan wonders why all demonic animals go to him and begins to suspect that the reason lies in himself. He recalls how he drank the blood of demons and now understands that he himself exudes the smell that attracts all the monsters. Karam appears and maliciously confirms his guess, saying that it is not surprising. Now he literally smells of demons. Getting angry, Cyan asks the Karam why she did not tell him about this before. Karam laughs and admits that it doesn't matter to her, because her real goal is to master his. Cyan is furious enough for the Keras by the throat, demanding from it to shut up and not get into his thought. Having released the Keras, Cyan activates a demonic sword and prepares for battle, squeezing the. A huge monster is pounced on him, but Cyan confidently looks into the eyes of the monster attacks, but Cyan deftly dodges and delivers a return blow with a sword, dissecting the enemy. The monster roars in pain, but the Cyan does not stop, delivering the next crush. After a short respite, Cyan breathes heavily, but his eyes are determined to continue the battle. Realizing that now no one is watching him, he decides not to restrain himself and use all the strength. At this moment, he notices a strange figure from afar, which appears from the shadows. Cyan is dumbfounded when he sees that a creature that he did not expect to meet is approaching him. A real young dragon appears in front of him, who is growing up with a growl for an attack. Cyan, in shock, understands that this is a violet dragon and begins to realize the seriousness of this. The dragon growls menacingly, showing sharp fangs and claws, preparing to attack. Karam is surprised to notice that the dragon is still young, but also felt the smell. With a grin, Kyan says that he's not worried. Why the dragon here is the main thing. Activating the technique Demonic Sword, Materialization. Cyan, with cold determination, is preparing to attack the dragon. Cyan activates a demonic sword and is preparing to catch a dragon, because now this goal is most important. Meanwhile, the dragon fiercely attacks. His claws flare up with magic, but the Cyan remains cold, blooded. While the rest are finishing off the remaining monsters, Villard and the Emperor are watching the battlefield. The Emperor asks about the princess and son of Villard, concerned about their fate. Villard apologizes that he could not find the traces of his son, but believes that now it is most important to save the princess. The Emperor is struck by his composure, because Villard calmly says that his son will cope himself. The Emperor, surprised at such an answer, agrees that the boys of the Vert clan should be strong. At that moment, the soldier reports what they found the princess, and they lead to the Emperor. The princess rushes to the Emperor, exclaiming that he urgently needs to be saved. The puzzled Emperor asks who exactly needs to be saved, because he does not yet understand. The princess in tears says that because of her, Cyan was in danger and blames himself. The Emperor tries to reassure her and asks to explain what is happening in order to understand the situation. The maid's maid is suitable, confirming that she accompanies. Villard carefully looks at her and asks directly, "What happened to my son?" The maid in a panic says that Cyan went into battle to distract the monsters and protect the princess. Nearby, the standing knight adds that he remembers where Cyan headed and can show them. The Emperor demands from Villard to immediately give an order to save, but Villard refuses coldly, saying that it is now more important to hold the front and save everyone, not. The Emperor and the princess are shocked by such a decision, because for them, the salvation of Cyan is a matter of honor. However, Villard stoically says that if they go to save his son, the whole camp will fall under the onslaught of monsters. The destroyed lands after the battle scare everyone because it is clear that demonic creatures will sooner or later break into the empire. The knights discuss that it is urgent to strengthen the defense of the camp in order to prevent a new attack by monsters. Emily, in a panic, asks what will happen to Cyan because everyone thinks that he died protecting the princess. The knight replies to her that Cyan had fulfilled his duty, saved the princess, and gave them a chance to salvation. Villard recalls what it means to be a faith. The duty to the empire is more important than the life of one. The Emperor hugs the princess, but it is clear how he is gloomy and preoccupied because everything did not work out as. The princess in tears thinks that he again became the cause of other people's suffering and cannot forgive himself. Suddenly, everyone hears a strange noise in the sky, which makes them raise their heads. The princess turns sharply, and her face freezes in horror when she sees a winged shadow in the knights shout, "Dragon!" aware of which monster they have to face. The princess's eyes are expanding when she realizes that this is not just a beast. This is a child of ancient dragon. Meanwhile, Cyan is still alive, fighting the dragon's cub to the side of the camp. The narrative tells about dragons, ancient creatures close to the creator of. An image of a frightening dragon personifies pure destructive power. I recall that the dragons are extremely rare. They are difficult to even see, not to mention to come. Next to Cyan, the young dragon is furious, and Cyan continues to fiercely fight him. Cyan squeezes the sword, reflecting on how ridiculous to be in the face of such an enemy alone. The knights standing by the camp are in horror watching the dragon flight and what is happening. The princess looks anxiously into the sky, hoping that Cyan can survive in this unequal battle. Finally, the princess screams his name in tears, and Villard silently watches her, realizing that his son chose the wares of Vertov. Cyan, in despair, realizing that the only way to save everyone is to kill a dragon who was stronger than he expected. He gritted his teeth, recalls how he dreamed of winning his own once and not rely on someone else. In front of him rises a huge cubs of the dragon, radiating a deadly aura, preparing for an attack. Karam, his demonic sword, insists, "You must eat this dragon, only this will become stronger." Cyan sees the approaching monsters who seem to smell the dragon and goes straight to him. He collects all his will into a fist, realizing that there was no time left for thoughts, we must act. He activates the reception of the Sword of the Fog, a storm of tearing fog, preparing to. His body is enveloped in scarlet energy. He rushes towards the enemy, completely concentrating on the attack. Cyan jumps to the dragon, directing the blow to his vulnerable place. The dragon turns sharply, and their blows collide, creating a powerful wave. Cyan barely manages to bounce, dodging the claws and poisonous breath of the monster, but he does not give up. He accumulates power again and rushes into the jump, waving his sword like a whirlwind. Karam mocks him, inciting, "You do not even use all my strength?" A miserable. Cyan responds with a furious blow, creating around him an explosion of bloody fog. He attacks with all his might, not allowing the dragon to go into a counterattack, knowing that there may be another chance. The dragon roars, wounded but not defeated, and in response strikes the tail, throwing Cyan. Parling the blow, Cyan repels from the ground and again goes on the attack, not giving himself time. He sees the dragon soaring into the sky, preparing to bring down a terrible blow on Cyan. Gritting his teeth, decides to take a chance to everyone and uses the last technique without a sword, an attack. Realizing that there is not enough strength, but you can't give up, he again rushes into battle because otherwise everyone. Cheyenne, clutching the sword, is preparing for the final blow. It is full of determination to fit. He rushes into the attack, cutting the space. His body moves faster than the wind, aiming at. Having gathered all force, he understands that he will no longer fall on the previous stunts of the enemy. He will act differently. In the eyes of Karama, an insidious fire flashes. The demon notices how Cyan changes, becoming stronger. Cyan understands that the dragon is retreating, but his heart is full of anxiety. Is the enemy has conceived a trap? He rushes after him, not allowing to run away, deciding to finish the beast while there is a From fatigue, Cyan falls to his knee, panting, but gathering his strength rises. In his gaze, determination lights up. If this is the last battle, then he will give everything he has. He jumps to the dragon, collecting the rest of the impact strength, hoping to win in one movement. Karam is furious, seeing how Cyan does not listen to him and demands that he give him. Cyan angrily replies that he will not allow the demon to control his body. He himself will bring the matter to the end. Karam mocks, they say. No matter what Cyan does, the enemy is too strong for. On top of the sky is dissected by dazzling light. A powerful magician interferes on the battlefield, ready to use a devastating spell. The magical seal releases the strength of the 8th level, preparing to hit all enemies around. Cyan looks at heaven with horror, realizing that this blow can destroy not only the dragon, but also himself. One of the army generals watches all this, thinking about the son of the Duke, who was drawn into this night. He recalls how he vowed to defend the princess, but now his thoughts are busy with the salvation of. The rays of light fall on the battlefield. The dragon desperately soars into the sky, trying to get away from. Cyan, with all its strength, also rushes after him, realizing that only he can finish the monster. He waves his sword, jumping on the dragon, and thinks, if I do not finish it now, no one can. Cyan, clenching his teeth, understands that he will not be able to dodge the attack and is preparing to take a blow. The powerful attack of the dragon almost reaches it. But at the last moment, Cyan tries to fend him off with his sword. From a powerful wave of strokes, Cyan throws away. He flies in the air, barely holding consciousness. Karam Yazvit, they say, why did he even get into the battle with the dragon if he could not cope? Cyan tirelessly replies that he has no choice. If he does not win, everyone will die. But suddenly a new idea is born in his head. Maybe there is still a chance to turn the battle. He understands that he can use water, even if it is dangerous to lure the dragon. Karam is shocked by such a plan, to jump into an infected river full of blood of demonic creatures. Cyan does not see another way out, decides to take a chance and rapidly falls down to where the river is. Meanwhile, 2 mysterious observers highly notice what is happening above the battlefield. One of them, with red eyes, says that he rarely sees dragons here. This is an unusual scene. The other replies that it seems that the dragon accidentally wandered here and was in trouble. The red-eyed man doubts and says that he feels something strange, not like ordinary. He understands that these are not just animals, but in the case people are involved, that alarming him. Both begin to follow the battlefield, trying to understand what was happening there and why people in. The red-eyed notes that he feels strange energy, and it does not belong to the demons or ordinary. He tells his partner that if he is so concerned, he can go check himself. He thinks for a moment, and then he decides to go in order to understand what people intervened in battle with the dragon. The red-eyed warns him so that he does not interfere directly, does not create problems. The man with a grin agrees and, swinging his wings, goes towards the battle, hiding. Cyan, breathing heavily, raises his head and notices that someone was watching him. The bloody river flows slowly, recalling the recent fierce battle and how much blood was Cyan sharply emerges from the water, coughing loudly, and takes a deep breath as if he had returned to. Having got out to the shore, he falls to the ground and breathes heavily, feeling fatigue throughout his body. He looks back at the river from where he had just got out and feels disgust to the smell of. The attempt to rise is given to him with difficulty. He falls again, realizing how exhausted after. But after a moment, Saiken still rises, leaning on the sword and lame. He sighs heavily and in 50 asks Karama whether he was alive after all this. Karam Yazvit, that almost died due to the stupid ideas of Cyan, but it seems to be intact. Cyan replies that we must quickly return to wash himself from this dirt and falls on the stone resting. Karam is trying to make him get together, scolding him for almost ditching himself and him with him. Cyan, leaning his back on a stone, whispers that everything is in order and he will certainly find a way to protect. At that moment, he suddenly freezes, hearing a strange voice echoing in his head. This voice was familiar to him, to trembling, as if he had heard him once in the darkest night of his life. The voice seems to pierce his mind, and Cyan feels how the heart begins to pound. He raises his head and sees a figure standing nearby who asks, "Are you a person?" Cyan remembers this voice with horror and understands who he belongs, This is the voice of the demon coral himself. Memories rolled in a wave, because this voice pursued him in a past life, leaving scars in his soul. It was the one who was afraid of even the strongest, the coral demon, the embodiment of evil. And everyone who saw him at least once said one thing. In front of them stood the very personification of horror. Cyan, breathing heavily, stands among the remains of defeated enemies, but understands that his trials are just beginning. He squeezes the sword in his hand, cursing the moment when everything went wrong, and wonders why this happened right now. A stranger with white hair arises in front of him, who with a cold look requires an answer. Cyan is silent, but is already preparing for a possible attack, realizing that this enemy is dangerous. The stranger, mockingly grinning, seeing Cyan, restrains the pain and continues to put pressure on him with questions. Cyan sharply activates the sword, filling it with force, and rushes into the attack, but the opponent easily retorts his blow. The stranger is first surprised by his courage, but then he begins to laugh loudly, as if enjoying the situation. "Maybe you really are the same guy with innate potential," he says, glancing down at the Cyan. Cyan freezes, hearing the word Demon King, and in his head one thought rushes. He looks at the silhouette in front of him and recalls the images of a Demon King, but refuses to believe in it because it is impossible. Cyan's lips are trembling. He feels fear tries to pick up his movements, but he tries not to show it. Inwardly, he understands that he has only one way out, to try to run away, but is not sure if he will. Suddenly, his opponent, looking at his confusion, says with a grin, "Hey baby, relax. I'm not going." Nevertheless, he immediately adds, "Although, what can I do such a wimp like you?" With a crooked smile. Cyan, in confusion, observes how a stranger suddenly falls on the ground, raising even more questions. He is still on his guard, but he feels that this enemy is in no hurry. With a white-toothed grin, looking from underneath, the stranger again repeats the question. "You are a person, yes?" Cyan, wiping sweat from his forehead, finally decides to nod and say, "Yeah." Lying on the ground, he looks at the sky and thoughtfully says, "It seems that the flow of water is troubled here." He squints and, looking at Cyan, says, "You are strange. Who are you really?" But Cyan only calmly replies, "A simple person." The coral demon carefully looks at Cyan, as if trying to make out something more than just a person. Cyan wipes sweat from his forehead, realizing that this demon is too calm, as if it were not a meeting with the enemy, but a normal. The coral demon, with a lazy grin, confirms that he had not yet met people, hinting at something strange in his essence. Cyan strains, realizing that in front of him there may be the same ruler of demons, because of which many people died. The coral demon says that he simply felt strange energy while patrolling his lands, but something more is heard in his words. He easily brushes away from his own power, as if this is not a duty, but a boring routine that has to be. Cyan carefully watches him, thinking that if the same Demon King is really in front of him, then he is too different from rumors. The demon suddenly asks why Cyan is not surprising, because he just admitted who he really is. In response, Cyan himself asks a question. If this demon is really the king, then why is he so relaxed and calm? However, remembering the future, Cyan internally strains, because if everything goes according to the scenario of his past life, then the invasion of demons will begin. He looks at the coral demon, realizing that he looks calm, but in the past he became a terrible threat to the whole world. Nevertheless, Cyan understands. Now in front of him is not the bloodthirsty monster about which legends were composed. Having gathered his thoughts, Cyan asked Demon Coral directly, "What do you really want?" Hoping to find out his true goal. The king of demons only grins, but interest flashes in his eyes. He clearly flatters him that Cyan dares to speak with him. Cyan, holding his fist, replies, "I want my people to live in peace and satiety," words in which sincerity is heard. The coral demon, covering his eyes, recalls something gloomy, as if he himself bears the severity of the past, which is not visible outside. Inside the Cyan, the suspicion begins to emerge that this demon is not so simple. Perhaps he himself is fighting with something inside himself. He recalls the dark power that he felt in a Demon King for a moment as a stigma of evil, which does not give him rest. Cyan firmly decides, if he wants to change the future, now is the time to stop the evil that should wake up in the demon. And having gathered with the spirit, Cyan looks directly into the eyes of the demon Coral and suggests, "Do you want to make a deal?" Dumbling thereby his interlocutor, Cyan, with a serious face, tells Demon Coral that soon something terrible will happen, threatening his. The coral demon asks in bewilderment what Cyan is talking about, because he does not feel anything like that. Cyan admits that he himself cannot explain everything, but he knows that if this is not stopped now, trouble will be. The king of demons, trying to joke, asks if Cyan wants to take away the land from him, but feels strange. Cyan confidently says that he is not going to attack, but asks for an honest promise, not to start a war. The demon thoughtfully crosses hands as if weighing the possible consequences of such a promise. He looks at Cyan and agrees with a grin. "Okay, let's say I will not start a war. What will you give in return? Cyan firmly replies that he is ready to help, what he can, and even at the cost of his own life. The coral demon looks at him point blank, leaning closer. You know something, boy. Cyan does not answer immediately, but determination is red in his eyes. And the king of demons silently with a strange smirk, the demon admits, you definitely hide something. But okay, we play in the usual rule. He asks the name of Kiel, and he, without hesitation, calls himself Cyan. The demon slowly repeats his name as if remembering, Cyan, where? I'll remember. The king of demons promises, if you are right, I will not start war. If you are mistaken, I will destroy it. Cyan only nods, realizing that another transaction cannot be a deal. They both silently say goodbye, and the demon takes off into the sky, disappearing from the battlefield. Cyan remains to sit on the ground, but now confidence in his eyes. He changed the course of history. Near the camp, the soldiers notice Cyan and shout in shock, there! The young master is alive! Knights and servants rush to him with joyful exclamations, calling it a miracle. Later, Cyan recalls, so I got a nickname. A boy who survived after a meeting with a devilish. Cyan is located in the hospital on the border of Velius, where he was brought after the battles. He comes to his senses, looks around, not understanding where he was. In front of him sits Aaron, who is going to say something with a little embarrassed, she asks him to become. Aaron, blushing, loudly repeats his proposal, insisting on the. Cyan is in complete confusion, not believing his ears, and does not understand the meaning of her. Aaron again repeats the question, expecting. She repeats the phrase even louder, already almost screaming. Cyan continues to look at her in a complete stupor, not knowing what to say. Aaron, noticing his reaction, is nervous, but continues. Cyan, not knowing how to answer, nods slowly, agreeing. Irene blushes, turning away and trying to maintain dignity, but sadness froze. Cyan watches her with irritation, thinking about how her behavior annoys him. He recalls that from the very beginning he knew about her weakness, but now she seems even more. It becomes obvious to him that the situation with Aaron can lead to problems in the. At this time, someone else reflects on an impending danger, recalling. Cyan admits that she is right in one thing. Now he cannot help her with anything. Arena lowers his eyes and says that he cannot be useful to anyone, even to him. She notices that Cyan does not need her, and that her support will not change anything. But then Aaron adds that he will watch him from afar until he becomes stronger. Arena is surprised, not believing that Cyan will real. Cyan confirms that it will not be disappointed in it if she tries. Arena decides that he should become stronger in order to once earn his recognition. Cyan carefully looks at her as if checking her determination. Aaron, smiling, declares that he will prove what is worth it and will make him admit it. Cyan in response only grins slightly, noting to herself how quickly she came to her senses. Irene leaves full of determination, and Cyan looks after her. Before leaving, Aaron sincerely thanks him. Xian remains to sit in silence, immersed in thoughts about the future. History goes to the new place where magicians of the Royal Association. In snowy forests, they make their way through the snowdrifts to one of the magicians drags behind a strange box curved by. He laughs, considering the magical artifact in which something powerful is stored. The magician is satisfied because there is very little left to complete the mystery, but suddenly an alarm covers him when the artifact begins to glow. He feels how invisible shackles are begging his body, not allowing to move. Dark energy begins to wrap himself around him, forcing him to. The artifact is unusual. The power of spatial magic is invested in it. The magician understands that it was this subject that was the cause of the death of the camp on the. Two mysterious figures appear from the shadow, which have long been following. The magician in horror realizes that Cyan has been watching him and his fraud all this. Cyan calmly looks at him, exposing his connection with the group selling prohibited. All in a gloomy aura, Cyan appears to the magician as a judge, ready to pronounce the verdict. The magician, in a panic, asks how Cyan found him, not believing in what was happening. Cyan says that he learned about his ties with underground through fake. The magician tries to unlock, pretending that he knows nothing and does not understand the accusations. Cyan recalls that the blood of demons is sold precisely thanks to such as this magician. Cyan recalls that even Aaron could suffer due to such transactions, and is angry. He understands that he cannot allow the magician to leave and leave his crimes unpunished. The magician, seeing that he was exposed, begins to raise magic to try to escape. He barely moves, but enough to begin the activation of the. Cyan is preparing to repel the attack, knowing that it is impossible to lose vigilance even for a moment. The magician explodes a powerful fire spell, trying to destroy Cyan at the last moment. After the flash of the flame, the magician hardly rises, thinking that he killed Cyan, but it was not there. Cyan calmly leaves the fire without a single scratch, confirming rumors about his strength. The magician realizes that he has lost a valuable artifact, which is now in the hands of Cyan. He is angry with himself, realizing that he had underestimated the young man, taking him for a. In despair, the magician attacks again, but suddenly a black haze pierces his hand. He watches in horror as his hand covers black fog, causing a sharp pain. The magician begins to scream, not understanding what kind of black magic had covered him, and settles on the ground covered by fear. Cyan in anger requires the magician to choose. Tell everything or die. He approaches, threatening with terrible reprisal if he does not give out the way of smuggling. With a terrible smile, Cyan promises him such death that even demons will envy. Meanwhile, on the border of Valius, there is an active trade and move. The merchants behave calmly, not suspecting that they are already watching them. They discuss that this time they will have more cargo for transportation. One of them opens the box to check how many goods. However, inside they find something unexpected from which their faces are distorted. One of them recognizes a familiar magical seal and calls the boss in a panic. They notice that all boxes are now under the curse and begin to panic. Cyan looks at what is happening from a height, watching the result of his trap. He recalls that the kingdom of Graham secretly traded the blood of demonic animals. In the past, monsters were created from this blood, and now they can do something much worse. Cyan thinks that if now this is not stopped, in the future, everything will only get worse. He understands that his actions are not revenge, but a way to save the world from disaster. His method are radical, but for Cyan, the main thing is to prevent chaos. He decides that it will not allow anyone to use the blood of demons for the sake of power. At this time in the Ushif Empire, someone watches what is happening from the window. This person recalls the name of Cyan, amazed at his return to the arena. A woman sitting on the bed clarifies whether this is the half-brother that they talked about. Emily is delighted. They finally left the front and go to the academy. Full of Cyan looks at her with a tired smile, realizing that everything is just beginning for him. He recalls that the academy is not at all a place for study, but full of dangers, and the world of politics and betrayal is hidden behind beautiful facades, and Cyan is ready for this. Emily dreams of romance and beautiful teachers, rejoicing at the upcoming. Cyan watches her joy, thinking that she does not even suspect what they have to face. Inwardly, he is preparing to meet with those who are behind many dark. And then the head of the new history begins. Reunion. Cyan enters the territory of the academy, restrainedly look. Suddenly, an excited voice is entangled, and an old acquaintance appears in front of him. Crank. The cradle runs up and hugs Cyan with a run, knocking him down. Cyan is in shock, and a spirit appears nearby, maliciously interested in who this strange guy is. Cyan explains that this is his half-brother and asks not to pay it. He himself is amazed in how the crane differs from other family members, so open and naive. Remembering his family, Cyan understands that the real opposites are hidden behind masks. They are met in a luxurious building, and Cyan goes along the red carpet. He recalls how his father had never even looked in his direction, but now he meets him with a smile, pretending to be always a caring. Cyan notices changes and understands that there is a game of show around. Finally, he enters the room, knowing that a new battle awaits him. Not behind the sword, but behind the authorities. Cyan, standing at the door, feels a rage boiling inside him. Behind this door, the one he hates. Opening the door, he meets the cold smile of a half-brother who has not seen for many. Trying to keep himself in his hands, Cyan tries not to show how much he restrains himself. The brother looks at him from top to bottom, as if it's something insignificant, continuing to play the role of sweetheart. Cyan's inner voice screams with anger, and a murderous fire flashes in his eye. He quietly squeezes a fist, ready to attack if he crosses. In a fit of rage, Cyan almost grabs weapons in order to end this hypocrisy. But the inner spirit stops him at the last moment, recalling that there is no time. The brother, meanwhile, stands calmly, watching his struggle, as if knowing that Cyan would not. As if mocking, he says, "I greet you, brother," pretending that everything is in order. Cyan does not answer immediately, looking at the enemy, but then it bows coldly, observing the formalities. "How can I forget my own brother's face?" he says through his teeth, hiding his... He, with a smug grin, puts his hand on Kian's head, as if emphasizing the words about how glad to see that he was not forgotten. He continues to show his... Closer, he says that he heard about the increased science skills in fencing. He looks at Cyan intently, saying that he will soon be able to help the family, obviously not in a good sense. Mentioning combat merits, the brother caustically adds that he expects a lot, although the threat is hidden behind these words. Cyan responds dryly, hinting that he is glad to help the family, but his thoughts are far from friendliness. He thinks that this person would never even look at the useless, but now he pretends to be. Smiling tension, Cyan says, "I miss too," knowing that the moment of reckoning would come. Emily drags his suitcases and grumbles that Cyan did not even think of helping her, although he himself. Tired, she sits right in front of the door and sighs heavily, dreaming of a moment. Unable to stand it, she rushes into the room, loudly indignant at why she was thrown so. But suddenly he encounters the first master, blushing and not knowing how to justify himself. He notes with a smile that Emily communicates well with Cyan and hints at Cyan. Passing by them, silently nods and goes into the room, not wanting to talk to anyone. Emily, in embarrassment, looks after him, not understanding how to behave. Kyan asks her to leave and leave him alone, but she hesitates, not getting used to such a... But his cold look and the threat to repeat the order make Emily retreat in fear. Left alone, Kyan breathes heavily, as if barely restraining himself after he falls on the bed, unable to cope with surging emotions. The spirit, with a malicious smirk, asks why Kyan did not take advantage of the chance to attack. But Kyan, having buried his face in the pillow, replies that it would be a stupid move, albeit seductive. The spirit, laughing, recalls that he would have expected the opportunity to capture his body if Kyan succumbed. Kyan grins back, realizing that he was really on the verge, but so far holds. He raises his head. A smirk appears on his face. That's how I should be. At that moment, fast steps are heard outside the door. The figure approaches the servant and stops in front of the door, not daring to enter. The permission is given, and the servant with a bow reports to the first master that he found it. The first master, sitting in an armchair, carefully listens and mysteriously smiles, clearly plotting something dangerous. The first master, sitting at a huge table, clarifies where the second lady is now. The servant explains that she is in the north, in the lands of elves, known for their isolation. The master tells him to inform him if there are signs of her return, hiding his real intentions. The servant, noticing a strange change in the mood of the master, carefully asks if something good happened. The first master only grins, not giving a direct answer, forcing everyone to guess about his thoughts. He recalls a meeting with Kyan and grins angrily, as if enjoying something hidden. The servant, noticing this, nervously comments that the owner today looks especially satisfied. But the first master immediately changes his face expression and, apologizing, says he just thought. Inside, he still sees Kyan's flaming gaze in front of him, and these eyes, as if he was looking at me like an enemy, he thinks, clenched. He decides not to lose vigilance because he clearly sees in Kyan a threat to his one. Sitting in the shade by the window, he plans further steps so as not to miss control. At this time, Xian, looking at the leaving wagon, coldly thinks that he should be ready. Emily shouts at him, saying that he was disappointed with his behavior, not believing in such a coldness. But Xian calmly replies that he cannot take her with him to the... Emily continues to be indignant, begging not to leave her alone, but he remains... Before planning in the carriage, he abandons in the end. Be smart, Emily. And Emily screams after him, not believing that he was so easily leaving, and tears appear in her eyes. But having gathered, she still shouts in his back, do not be sad there under... Kyan, leaving, only smiles a little, knowing that they both have a lot of tests ahead. Kyan thoughtfully recalls as in the past, seriously ill, he turned out to be... In the moments when his strength left him, there was not a single soul next to him except Emily, and only her concern helped him survive when everyone else turned. He remembers how she sat at his bed at night, changing cold compresses and following the temperature. If not for Emily, he would have died alone, forgotten by everyone. And therefore, despite all his external coldness, he values it more than it seems. Seeing him away, Emily until the last moment tried to hide her anxiety, screaming cheerfully at the end. Kyan, sitting in the carriage, silently watched how she disappeared from sight, but inside felt heavy. Now sitting in a carriage, he thinks that an academy is waiting for him ahead of him, a place full of intrigues. He cannot relax. 6 knights have been sent for protection, which seems excessive for simple... Realizing this, Xian understands that someone may prepare a trap, and a trip to the academy is not so simple. The carriage goes through the snowy lands and the knights are closely observed. Qian decides that he should be on the alert, because too much attention is focused. When the evening comes, the knights stop at a halt to wait. One of them reports to Keanu that they will stop until the morning and continue the journey as soon as it... Xian agrees, but notes to himself that it is worth expecting. He leaves the carriage and carefully looks around the camp, checking if everything is calm. Before going to bed, he once again sorting through all possible threats in his head, knowing that enemies can be closer than it seems. Lying in a carriage, he looks at the ceiling, preventing himself from completely relaxing. Ahead of the academy, and there will begin a new, much more dangerous game in which he will have to survive. Xian immediately realized that the forest in which they stopped was not the one that they talked about to him. Falsers, he thought, looking at a strange place where there should not have been a single tree. It was too far from Saffron, and Qian realized that they were going to eliminate him. He leaves the carriage with a slight smile, portraying a knight. What a fresh air, he says, looking around as if not noticing ambushes. The knights look at each other, wondering why their victim is so calm. One of them notices that Qian smiled, and this scares them. In response to silence, Xian looks directly into the eyes of one of the knights, and his gaze. You really think that I do not understand why you are here? He says. The main knight, unable to stand it, takes out the sword. It is a pity that it happened, but we must fulfill the order. Qian grins. You at least try to do it beautifully, but I will help you do it. He takes out his demonic dagger, and dark energy begins to swirl around him. I will only ask once. Who sent you? He says in an icy tone, preparing for... There was no answer. The knights began the attack. Xian deftly evades, leaving behind only a trace of dark... I will show you what it means to contact me. he whispers, rushing into a counterattack. His blade flashes scarlet light, and the first knight falls, struck by an instant blow. What the hell? In a panic, one of the remaining people screams, but Cyan methodically destroys opponents, leaving no chance. The last knight, realizing his fate, falls to his knees, but Cyan only looks at him gloomily. Now you will regret that you have... Cyan calmly looked at the frightened knight, who understood that he had no chance. This is a trap, thought the knight, breathing heavily. He did not believe that the boy, whom he was ordered to be killed, could be so easy to deal with them. After the dragon to survive and fight like that, it is impossible. A thought flickered in his head. Cyan looked indifferently as he shudders with... Say who is behind this, Cyan demanded coldly. The knight cried out in a panic, This is an order from Madame Margaret. Hearing the name, Cyan squinted displeasedly, squeezing the deck. So simple? He grinned mentally, not believing that everything was so easy. Krantz! It was a crane who asked for it. The knight cried out as if afraid to shut up. Cyan nodded, fixing this information. I see. Have you thought I would be easy prey? The knight lowered his head. It was a mistake. We thought you were not dangerous. Yes, it would be easier for you, Cyan said. He looked at him with a cold grin. Are you not particularly upset by what you... The knight grinned bitterly. We were the first to try to kill you. I have no... Cyan thought, but then waved his hand. Go, but no, I will remember. The knight looked dumbly at him. You will not kill... Cyan indifferently turned away. There is a difference between a loser and a deceased. The knight thanked him, almost crying. Thank you, young master. Cyan got into the carriage, and when they reached the place, he said quietly, We arrived. The central city, Saffron, met Cyan with cold light. At this time, a panic was in full swing in the castle. What does it mean, dead? Shouted a woman. Of the 7 knights, 1 disappeared, the rest were killed, her servant. You said it will not be a problem! Margaret hissed angrily, clinging to the glove. We underestimated the young master of Cyan, the man admitted gloomily. It's just a child. How could you fail this? Cried. Maybe someone helps him from the shadows. He uncertainly inserted one of the knights. Silence, the woman cut off him. If he gets to the... Margaret is in a panic. If Cyan gets to the crane, and remembered the red eyes of Cyan. No one should know about it. To destroy everyone who was involved, she ordered. Meanwhile, Cyan rode in a carriage, watching. 10 days have passed since the release of Saffron, he thought. Brian all this time pretends to be my servant. Glancing at him, thought. They already know that I am alive. And the question of what to do with Brian remained. Young master, we almost arrived, Brian said, smiling. Finally, Cyan answered lazily, recalling the old days at the... I can't say that I have good memories. The carriage stopped at the impressive gate leading to the academy. Cyan corrected the uniform and came out. Cyan Worth, from the family of the Duke of Verta. Welcome, the elder brother of the man, the girl said joyfully at the gate. Cyan carefully looked at the knight, squeezing a bag of gold in it. Have you heard me? I don't need you anymore, he said calmly. Brian stood in shock, not knowing what to say. Your role is over, Cyan repeated, turning to the huge hall. P-wage, young master, I want... Brian began, but he interrupted a strict... What else? Brian pulled his sword and kneeled. Allow me to serve you for the... Cyan raised an eyebrow in surprise. You were just a coach? I am a knight of Wellius. Let the lower rank... Brian said loudly. Do you want to serve? Then prove your devotion, said Cyan. If my father was alive, he would say, find the one to whom you can trust life, Brian added sad. Cyan looked towards the window, thinking, it's for me, no. Even if you will not accept, I will stay nearby, stubbornly answered Brian. Cyan grinned. Do you know that you can die? I know, but it's better to die for the one you consider worthy, Brian said. Fine, but do not try to betray me, said Cyan quietly, looking directly into it. For nothing, Brian answered immediately. Okay, let's go, but I do not want to go to the ceremony. First, an exam on the elements. See you. Got it, young master. Brian bowed with respect. They headed deep into the academy, where the tests have already begun. Cyan stood in the corridor of the academy, pondering everything that he had heard earlier in the office of the dean. Dark element, he whispered under his breath, squeezing. At that moment, Brian approached him, looking around with worriedly. Young master, are you all right? He asked quietly, so as not to attract attention. I'm fine, answered Cyan, but his eyes remained gloomy. A loud voice came from behind. Hey, is this not the bastard that survived on the... Cyan turned around and saw a group of students in front of him, laughing and talking. Porter Pendergast stood at the head, the one who humiliated him in a past life just like a crane. Well, and what have you forgotten here? Decided to pretend to be strong after all? Porter said with... Cyan looked at him coldly without saying a word. What? The language swallowed? Or are you afraid that you will be put in place again? Added another student. Brian stepped forward, but Cyan stopped him with a slight movement of... Are you sure? Brian whispered, not taking his eyes off the group in front of them. Yes, I need it, Cyan answered calmly, coming closer to the porter. Do you really think that now you have become special? Porter grinned, looking down from top to bottom. And you? Do you think everything will remain so? Cyan retorted sharply. His voice sounded calm, but a threat was read. Porter frowned, not expecting such an answer. Soon you will understand that times have changed, added Kyan, passing by. What a look, the students whispered among themselves, seeing him off with wary eyes. Brian only grinned and followed, realizing, this is only Kyan, coldly looking at Popper, slowly lowered his hand, removing his magic. The entire hall froze in tension, not expecting such frightening pressure from Popper, clinging to the wall, frantically swallowed the air, afraid to even move. Next time, think before leaving. Qian threw calmly. Krantz, still trembling, nodded and, stumbling, ran away without turning around. So, step by step, I'll begin to change everything that I had to change, thought Qian. His lips were touched by a light grin when he, as if nothing had happened, went to the... Let them think that I am weak. It's even easier, flashed through. Meanwhile, a strict figure appeared in the corridor. Shirika, Academy. She walked quickly, clearly worried with something, holding a list of students in her hands. Where could he go? This list should be here, she wondered. Cheyenne, watching from the shadow, whispered quietly, Are you looking for this? And showed the... Shirika turned sharply, peering into his face, but seeing a calm smile, frowned. Where did you get this material from? She asked with... It just ended up at the right time in the right place, he answered calmly, passing her paper. Shirika took the scroll, carefully peering into it, and... Cyan, right? I didn't think that you would be useful, she said thoughtfully. I try as I can, Cheyenne threw with a slight grin, turning around. When he left, Shirika looked after him, squinting his eyes. This guy is not so... Cheyenne, leaving the library, grinned. Let them think for now. Cheyenne carefully looks at the magical seal in his hands, realizing that he has found something important that could change his... It activates the power of darkness, and purple energy envelops the scroll, allowing you to read the hidden text, which was previously... At this time, the Shirika with an ice grin is watching him, releasing his own dark flame as if checking his... She, as if by chance, is interested in how he lives at the academy, but a clear subtext is hidden behind this issue, which Cyan perfectly... Shirika notes that Cheyenne understood her hint too quickly and, grinning slightly, says that his element is very rare, causing an inner alert. Cyan, holding back emotions, thinks to himself that his element of darkness seems to be useless, but in fact hides great power. Shirika looks directly into the eyes of Sayano, reporting that he attracted her attention precisely because of this power, and offers a special friendship, which is more like... They sit in a large library hall, and the atmosphere becomes tense when Shirika claims that such a gift usually does not carry anything good in itself. With a slight smile hiding his own true intentions, Shirika says that perhaps their meeting is fate to find out which of them is more dangerous. Cyan feels contradictory emotions inside. On the one hand, interest in a mysterious girl on the other is a fear because he does not trust anyone. Shirika, approaching closer, adds that he wishes him good luck in the future, as if leaving the right to observe him as a new... While she leaves, Cyan examines the room, realizing that Shirika left too many questions and not a single answer, and mentally swears to unravel her game. She stops at the door, saying to herself that she will gladly convey everything that she learned about Cyan to her master, hinting at a certain pace. At that moment, before the eyes of Cyan, the image of a With surfaces as the head of the powerful organization of the murderers Fog, known for their dark affairs. He represents how the leader of the Fog watches him through a magic mirror, analyzing his every step and strength, which he barely manages to hide. Cyan decides not to show fear, so he holds out his hand as if agreeing on a deal, but in his soul he decides firmly to keep the... Shirika with a grin shakes his hand, noting to himself that he is not as simple as it seemed to her at the beginning, and now he is precisely interesting for their organization. When she leaves, Cyan sighs in relief, but still tense inside, realizing that now he has become the goal of not only students of the academy, but also hired. He quickly examines the left tea and understands that something is wrong in it. Too sweet, too fragrant. There is definitely poison. With a crooked grin, Cyan aloud says that now it is clear why Shirika behaved so calmly, because she hoped that the poison would act until the end of their conversation. Shirika with a grin says that the poison in tea is not fatal, but only a test to understand how far Cyan went in his skill. Cyan with a cold smile replies that such tricks no longer act on him, because he has long learned to cleanse poison thanks to experience with demonic. Strong darkness hugs around Cyan, and he looks at With with wariness, realizing that its actions are not just a check, but part of a more dangerous... Shirika, having hit the table with his fist, abruptly asks how he knows about her real person and connections with the organization Fog. He takes out one of the forbidden books, pointing to the page with information about the With, which is stored in the most protected section of the academy. Shirika, squinting, is surprised at how detailed Cyan studied her secrets, including the location of books and her rank in the Fog. Cyan, looking calmly at her, throws, "This is enough to understand who you are really, right?" In response, Shirika is angry, Her eyes glow with rage and she accuses Xian of acting a double game, playing out of himself a naive. He calmly explains that on the way to Shatran, he heard many rumors about the strange deaths of the nobility suspiciously associated with her organization. Sharika strains. Her eyes darken when Kyan notes that all these killings are too purely planned to be. Kyan, with a gloomy grin, adds that under the guise of the academy, she conducts her purification process, eliminating the objectionable ones. Sharika, leaning on the back of the chair, grinks and says that he should not climb into the affairs of the elders, otherwise he will pay too much. She envelops herself with darkness, saying that if he wants to be part of the fog, he will have to go through the test. Cheyenne in response releases his energy, covered with red patterns, and replies that he has his own methods to deal with. Shirika with a grin asks if he really threatens the teacher, but Cayenne looks in her eyes right in response, making it clear that he is not. Suddenly, the With breaks off and attacks the first, throwing a spell filled with black magic into. Cayenne easily deviates and retorts her attack, showing that he is ready for her. He rushes at her, starting with hand-to-hand combat, and says, "Let's see how you can handle the one you tried to kill." Cyan evades the next attack and contrasts sharply the crushing space around. Shirika, panting, understands that he is not an ordinary student, and for the first time in a long time, he feels a real fear of the end. Cyan evades a With attack. His movements are fast and accurate. He carefully monitors her every step, preparing for a counterattack. Shirika, in rage, shouts that he will not let him go, because now he knows too much, and she is obliged to destroy him in order to maintain the secrets of the. Cyan, with cold determination, activates its weapons, and crimson energy wraps his hand, preparing for a powerful blow. When Shirika rushes at him, Cyan meets her attack with his demonic blade, and their forces collide in a dazzling outbreak. Cyan easily raves her blows, showing that it was no longer the weak boy that she considered him before, but a worthy opponent. He attacks with pressure, forcing his With to retreat, and says that if she does not believe in his strength, he will simply. Their swords collide again and again, creating explosions of magical energy, filling the whole room with darkness and light. Shirika looks at his weapon in shock, realizing that this is the same demonic blade that can be subject only to the chosen ones. The weapon in the hands of Cayenne pulsates with gloomy energy, and he calmly asks if she now recognizes his strength. Shirika, in bewilderment, retreats back, not understanding how Cayenne was able to master such weapons and what this means. Cayenne says that the fog is now probably looking for it because she failed her task and allowed the information leak. Shirika does not know how he found out that she was hunting for her, because this is a secret known only to the chosen members of the fog. On the streets of the city, there is a magic seal, which opens the portal from which the figure comes out in a dark cloak. Cayenne, watching the portal, understands that this is his path to further answers and takes a step toward. A figure appears in a hood, activating spatial magic to bring someone to the hidden base of. They go through the portal and Shirika is left alone, realizing that he is losing control of the situation that came out of her power. Inside the base of the fog, they are met by a strange girl, and Cyan carefully studies a new place hidden from everyone. The figure in the cloak says that he will have to go further, because this is a test for those who want to become part of the fog. Cyan silently watches the spacious halls of the base, realizing that this place is very different from what it seems outside. In the depths of the base, he hears strange steps and understands that someone is already watching him, preparing to test. Cyan coldly examines the environment, instantly noticing the enemies who were waiting for him from different sides, preparing for the. He quickly rushes forward, evading attacks and inflicting accurate blows, demonstrating incredible speed and dexterity. After a series of movements, he with a grin stands right in front of the enemy, as if he had known their plan from the very. Enemies in shock watch like a Cyan, without making special efforts, reflects their joint attacks and counterattacks. Shadow blades fly apart, encountering Cyan daggers, but none of them can break through his protection. One of the attackers is surprised how Cyan was able to reflect his dagger in a fraction of a second, not letting him. A shadow with a white eye with admiration notices that the guy whom they underestimated was more dangerous than it seemed. Cayenne continues to jump between enemies, moving so fast that it seems as if he was dissolving in. He activates the expansion technique. His weapon begins to radiate an ominous red aura, threateningly pulsate. The enemy is horrified to watch Cyan, realizing that the technique that he owns is available only to the elite of the killer. Having gathered all force, Cyan spreads the space with a wave of red energy, leaving enemies without a chance of resistance. Against the background, the image of a skeleton with outstretched hands appears, a symbol of the secret technique of bloody murder, subject only to the. One of the enemies, choking in pain, barely holds on his feet, in a panic realizing that his strength was. Xian calmly watches the defeated, knowing that they will not rise for a long time after such a blow. Nevertheless, one of the opponents is still standing, and Cyan carefully monitors him, anticipating the danger. He thinks that this enemy can be someone important in their organization, since he so easily withstood. The enemy activates his foggy sword technique, plunging the blade into scarlet energy, preparing for a response. Kyan instantly reacts, jumping aside so as not to fall under the attack, and is preparing for a new battle. He wonders how the enemy was able to stop his equipment halfway, realizing that he was really a strong opponent. The stranger with a grin says that Cyan has mastered the main martial art of their clan well, but now you will have to fight for. Cyan evades the attack of Karika, and she says with a crazy smile that she can no longer restrain herself, wanting to see his real. Cyan looks at her in surprise, not understanding why she had this fight, because he was not going to reveal all the cards so quickly. Sarika with burning eyes demands that Cyan show her his true abilities. She longs to see what he is capable of. She instantly attacks, releasing a powerful wave of energy. Her blade sparkles, ready to strike, which is difficult to dodge. Sarika says that Cyan is worthy to fight her, and that is why she will not keep herself within the framework, promising to show all. She rushes into battle. Each of her blow becomes faster and stronger. The desire to check Cyan brings her excitement. Cyan is preparing for a new attack. His gaze becomes serious. He understands that this battle will drag out if he does not show power. He responds to her with sharp counterattacks, while in his head the thoughts flash about whether to reveal his potential to the end. Sarika breathes heavily. Her eyes glow with madness. She requires continuation because she wants to feel a real battle, in earnest. Cyan understands that he will not come out further. He collects energy in himself, preparing to reveal the force that will not leave it a chance. The whirlwind of dark energy envelops him, and the Cyan focuses, thinking about how not to cross the line and not to kill it by chance. He recalls his training and understands that this battle can be a check, so you need to act, but not. With a jerk, Cyan strikes a powerful blow, showing that he is not just a student, but one who can repulse even the. Sarika falls to the ground, but instead of anger, a smile appears on her face. She finally met a worthy opponent. Cyan comes closer and coldly says that she should relax, showing that the battle is over, although he could finish everything different. Sarika hardly raises her head, and surprise in her gaze reads in her gaze. In Cyan, she sees a force that she did not expect. At this moment, a mysterious woman appears. Her figure is filled with darkness. She says that she did not want to intervene, but now she was obliged. The woman calmly declares that he knows Cyan, and he realizes that he faces not a random person, but someone from the world of. Cyan strains, preparing for a possible new battle because now he will have to deal not only with Sarika, but also with a new. The woman looks at him calmly, but in her words the threat is highlighted. She recalls that he attacked the master and must pay for it. He looks at Sarika, thinking whether she is really sure that he is for whom he gives himself. Inside it is already ripening the tension. A woman in a dark mantle sarcastically says that instead of checking, he could simply call his god if he doubts. She continues, hinting that in front of him is a great chance to prove strength. The atmosphere is heating up, and it becomes clear that he can't just. The second woman calmly says that for a start, it is worth dealing with the successor, pointing to the Cyan. Cyan asks in bewilderment, not understanding why so much attention is paid to him. Meanwhile, the mysterious figure resembles Cyanu, that he is now the heir, and he needs to prove it. Black eyes watch him, waiting for an answer, while Cyan hardly rises after a recent. Inside him, thoughts come up about whether it is worth answering a call now, but a girl with a sword says that he should not give up. Sarika smiles mischievously, saying that he will fight him if he does not refuse. She literally craves a battle. Cyan looks at her in horror, realizing that in front of him is a crazy and strong rival, and jokes are inappropriate here. The mysterious girl approaches him and, grinning, says that he should learn to accept calls if he wants to survive. She explains that only in battle can you learn something, and adds that now a good chance. Cyan, although he does not want this, still gets up, saying that if necessary, he will accept the battle. Sarika smiles in anticipation, saying that for her, it will be an honor to fight the demonic sword. Karam irritably says that they do not spare opponents and adds that there is no training battles for him. Sarika, looking at Cyan, said with a mockery that he would like to see his limit and find out if he is able to bring it to the limit. At this moment, another figure looking from above says, "Enough," making it clear that the time of the games is over. Someone pronounces the name Eru, and the dark portal opens nearby, shimmering with mystical light. Cyan seriously looks at the portal, realizing that this is his path, and says that he is ready to test without taking. And finally, the figure from darkness makes the order, "Send the heir to the altar." And Cyan, gathering his strength, takes a step forward, thinking, finally, a gloomy figure appears in front of Cyan, filled with purple radiance. She whispers that she will finally meet the god of darkness, Eru, as if obsessed with this moment. An angry man screams that the god of fog is evil, and his faith is full of hatred. The face is distorted by madness. He does not believe in The skull pierced by a dagger symbolizes the terrible price that the god of fog requires for service. This god kills without hesitation. The figure in a hood shrouded in darkness calmly says the god answers only one. What is decided? His will is absolute. The luminous image of God whispers, which is not important, good or evil. If you protect your own, you are right. This is the whole point of his. Against the background of the mysterious circle, two figures appear. Inside the mystical arena, only Cyan and its test. There are no simple. The name of the new chapter speaks for itself. Before us, a meeting with the god of fog, Eru. The test has begun. Cyan and Kix rise along the majestic staircase leading to the altar. They are surrounded by darkness, but a faint light. At the very top point on the throne, a mysterious figure sits watching them. This is the Eru himself, the god of darkness. Cyan calmly replies that of course he knows who is in front of him. He is ready to meet God face. Eru, slightly inclining his head, confirms the name of Cyan, wondering how much he realizes his strength. Cyan looks directly into the eyes of God, saying that the fog is now with him, that the power is growing inside. On the throne, God thinks that checking whether Cyan is really worthy of this power, evaluating it. Memories of the past with a red whirlwind flash in the minds of Cyan. He sees himself in the moment of the greatest rage. God admits that Cyan does not know, but understands that the situation concerns the one who was supposed to be it. On the pedestal in the ray of light stands a stone, a symbol of the rights of the heir. God notes that the one who was intended disappeared last. The eyes of God glowing, and he says that perhaps the mist Sarika was supposed to be here, but did. Pinky, surfacing nearby, Ulsvit that Sarika changed her mind and escaped, but admits that she coped well with her teacher's role. God looks into the eyes of Shiano, noting their strength and maturity, which do not correspond to his age, but only confirm the chosenness. In the finale, God raises his hand, as if about to endure his verdict. Red light flashes in his palm, emphasizing the seriousness of the moment. Cyan calmly says that the one whom they consider to be part of this force in fact has nothing to do with it. He hints that his past. Eru grunts and replies that if Cyan is looking for an omnipotent god, he was mistaken in the door. He no longer has strength, and he is not the one who everyone considers him. Cyan agrees with this, admitting that the words to Eru are true. He looks directly in the face of God, not showing. But Eru himself continues that this weakness is even at his hand. Now that it is less responsible, it is free. Sitting on the throne, Eru thinks that now he does not need to do anything. The real successor finally appeared. The eyes of God darken, and he says, Anum. His voice sounds like a warning or recalling the ancient name. He continues that Cyan brought something funny with him. As if in this guy there is something more than it seems. Cyan confidently replies that now he is not going to do anything. The smile on his face is full of, and yet he cannot hide the sparkle of gloating. His angry smirk says that he is ready for a lot for his goal. Eru is watching him, noting that Cyan carries the evil seed. But what is its true nature? It remains to be found. At the same time, God says that although he hates many things, he will follow the rules of the game. Right now, he is unable to break them. Cyan, in response, squeezes in his hands a magical force full of darkness, as if preparing to show what he's capable of, but while restraining. He thinks what he will do with this force. What kind of choice is it? This is a question that bothers Eru. The image of the brother for which Cyan lives pops up, his promise. I will live for my brother. This is what keeps him in the way. Eru recalls that he has already encountered similar situations in the past. People also came to him for the sake of strength, but their choice was different. Cyan suddenly seems to retreat, recalling something important that changed his life. As if this meeting again stirred the old pain. Eru, looking into the darkness, says that there is nothing worse than the truth, and it is always worth remembering, even if the truth hurts. Before his eyes, the moment of defeat is again flashed, the memory of the past when he was broken. Again, he whispered. He slowly goes forward, as if ready to accept a new call. His steps are firm, and this time he does not intend to retreat. Eru is watching him, saying to himself that this time everything should be different. And in his eyes, a new hope is reflected. Cyan calmly declares that he came for force, and everything that interests him is a personal benefit. His gaze is determined. The god of the fog replies that the concepts of good and evil for each are his own, and Cyan himself must decide whether he will regret this choice. Cyan, with a serious expression on his face, warns God so that he thinks well over the answer. Much depends on his words. Eru notes that if the answer is not what he expects, he may have to resort to force. The atmosphere is. Meanwhile, God notes that there are still many tests ahead. The situation is not as simple as He looks at Cyan carefully and says that the guy clearly conceives something. His eyes shine. In response, Cyan unexpectedly laughs. No, his short answer confuses God. But under him, a deep meaning is hidden. Aeru says that the main thing is that his name rises again. He is little interested in details if the result is. The eyes of God flare up when he thinks about the possibilities that the alliance with Cyan opens. But doubts do not leave him. At this moment, a familiar demon with a fiery head appears. He intervenes in the conversation, clearly concerned about. The demon with hissing asks what is happening in general, and why Eru is so easily inferior to Cyano. He is clearly angry. When the demon is approaching, Eru is displeased with displeasure, saying, "Stay away from me." Their relationship is. Cyan watches this, realizing that the situation is more complicated than it seems. The demon and God are not as one as you might think. Eru throws a stream of energy into the demon, which is why he screams. Obviously, there are unresolved conflicts. Demon in a panic. "What have you done to me?" He is covered by strange magic and he cannot understand how this. He begins to writhe in pain, shouting the words, but Eru remains cold. His plan works. Meanwhile, a mysterious girl with a magic wand appears. Her appearance changes the balance. Cyan, watching everything, wonders why his own mana is not consumed. This adds riddles. The girl indignantly asks Sikan what he did to her. He replies that he simply gave her part of his strength. God notices that if Cyan wants to call the demon, he will have to create a magical form. This is the next. Cyan is shocked by the strange trick of the girl, who laughing says that he is now her student. He does not know how. The next day, in a student dormitory, everything seems calm, but Cyan has a heaviness in his soul after meeting with the god of. Cyan laughs, seeing his satellite be confused. "What's happening?" whispers that one. But Cyan replies, "I don't know. Just leave it at." The satellite tries to object, worrying about Cyan, but he brushes away from the unrest, pretending that he is satisfied with it. Meanwhile, a mysterious woman sits in the room, pondering the plan. Her thoughts about Cyan clearly haunt her. She feels interest in him. She tells herself that it is necessary to find out who he is really, and how his strength is connected with the god of fog. Suddenly, another girl with a grin notes that this is quite a normal relationship, as she thinks, although the atmosphere is intense. Somewhere else there's a strange fight, as if someone was checking someone else's power, not thinking about the consequences. Cyan watches this, realizing that his student is involved in something dangerous. He understands. This is already my student, I can't retreat. Leaving everyone, Cyan goes for a walk to get together with his thoughts. But his companion is in a panic. "Master, do not leave me." While Cyan leaves, behind him begin to make plans for a new fight. Its absence only fuels excitement in others. Meanwhile, Cyan thinks, looking at the city, he finally got a break, but his heart is restless. And suddenly, when he stops, he feels a strange smell. "Blood?" he thinks anxiously. Turning, he sees a wounded guy who breathes heavily, squeezing the bloodied side. Obviously, he was greatly. The guy barely holds on his feet, and now he is hit again, forcing him to fall. Cyan clenches his fists, realizing that he should intervene. The wounded guy, with difficulty rising, crawls, leaving a trace of blood behind him. It's hard to observe. Meanwhile, in a dark alley, a group of guys agrees to try something new. Their tone is. They grin viciously, saying, "Come on right now." And one of them takes out a strange magic ball, obviously with bad intent. The ball begins to glow with an ominous orange light. Cyan, seeing this from afar, tenses. It is dangerous. The guy sitting on the ground looks around and sees one of the hooligans approaches him with a ball in his hand. "Hey, look what I have in Cerise," he says. The guy in fear tries to cover himself with his hands, but they continue to torment him. He is pressed against the wall and pain is visible on his face. A mocking offender hangs on top, not collect. A guy with golden hair gloomily looks at his victim, holding a flaming fireball in his hand. He's ready to throw him right in the face of the poor man, enjoying. The flame in his hand begins to glow brighter, and the guy in a panic closes his eyes, waiting for a blow. His face is distorted from fear, and others look at it with evil interest. There is a loud scream, "Stand!" and everyone turns around. A girl with an icy gaze appears in the crowd, which clearly shows that she will not tolerate such. Cold and powerful, the girl stands forward. She directly says that this is a shame to mock a student like that, and that such people have no place among the nobles. She looks at the offenders with contempt and says that the nobleman is obliged to protect the weak and not to torment them for fun. Her words sound like the guy holding the fireball for the first time in all the time loses confidence. His hand trembles when the girl takes a step forward, continuing to look into his eyes. Her voice, full of conviction, is heard again. She orders to immediately stop this trick, not allowing to justify or escape. She says that doing such actions is shame and shame for anyone who considers themselves noble. Words penetrate right into the heart of everyone who watches. Looking at the guy sitting on the ground, she says that she protects him. Seriousness does not leave her face,
and it is clear that she is ready to go to. Another guy comes up looking slightly mockingly at her. He seems to know who she was, but did not expect to meet her here. The girl seems to be. She is the 5th princess of the empire, Nin. After that, a whisper begins in the crowd, and everyone understands how serious the situation be. One of the senior students politely bows in front of her, realizing that in front of him is not a simple girl, but a high-born person. However, Nin is not going to politely conduct a dialogue. She sharply says that she does not want to conduct empty conversations and requires an explanation about the attack. The offender tries to get out and says that a misunderstanding happened. His face grimaced in a stretched smile, but anxiety is visible in his eyes. The guy slyly offers to ask the victim himself to tell the truth himself. But everyone understands that this is an attempt to pressure. The guy sitting on the ground lowers his head. His shoulders tremble, and he does not dare to look at anyone, afraid to say what should be said. Under the pressure of views, he squeezes out the words, "No, they didn't beat me." His voice trembles, and it becomes clear that he's afraid of the consequences of the truth. The guy continuing to hold him grinks and asks, "You see, he himself says so." At the same time, his hand holds tightly by the shoulder, not even allowing to breathe free. The guy finally, timidly says, "No, I'm not a sacrifice." But in his eyes and how he avoids looking at the defender, everyone is clear. This is a lie under pressure. The girl in anger looks at the offender, demanding to explain why he hides his essence. She clearly does not intend to leave everything as it. The guy, wounded and hardly standing on his feet, is trying to justify the offenders, asking them to leave them alone. He is afraid of the consequences if they find out that he was telling the. A malevolent blonde hangs over him, laughing at the situation. He mocks and whispers that no one will believe a weak boy. The girl frowns, realizing that these people will not stop. She decides to take the boy with her so that he is no longer tormented. However, the blonde grabs her hand, preventing her from leaving. His gesture is rude, and the girl in fright turns towards him, but holds confidence. The guy continues to hold her, smiling brazenly. She demands to let her go, and the boy aside looks with fright and hope. The girl looks coldly into the eyes of the offender, saying that if he does not let her go now, he will regret it hard. He only laughs, confident in his strength. He challenges her, preparing to show who is the main one here. But at that moment, someone throws him back with force, and the guy falls to the ground, not understanding what happened. The girl looks at Cian in amazement, realizing that it was he intervened and saved them. Cian calmly comes closer. His eyes are cold, but they read the determination to punish the. The girl pronounces his name with surprise, not believing her eyes. Did he really come to help? Cian, looking at her, repeats the word Leximus, what he is trying to remember where he had already heard this. The boy standing nearby looks at Cian dumbfounded because I just understood who is standing in front of him. The next second, the action is transferred to the castle where the battle is already going on. From there, loud explosions of magic are heard. Magic blades burst from the shadow, which Cyan deftly controls, directing them to enemies. Meanwhile, the boy, looking into the distance, recalls the events associated with the Garden Kingdom, where one famous warrior once left. Her fate was not easy. She changed citizenship and left the academy, but left an indelible mark in the memory. Bright magic spells flare up in the sky, tearing the air with powerful blows. The battle unfolds with and among the chaos of enemies, in the thick of the battle, the same girl appears, ready to engage in a fight on the side of. Cian rushes into battle, confidently cutting the air with a blade filled with magic. His movements are accurate and dangerous. A guy with purple hair falls heavily to the ground, gritting his teeth in pain, recalling how, by order of the Empire, he killed someone important. We see how in the past the castle was the place where the strongest fighters gathered. But something went wrong, and destruction flooded. A beautiful but dangerous woman is preparing for the battle, raising the sword. Her eyes are full of determination. She will fight to the. The guy in school uniform calls someone by name, shocked by what he saw and not understanding what to do. Cian approaches, rudely pushing those who attacked the boy, preventing them from continuing. The blonde, grinning, notices that Cian intervened and offers him a game. Obviously, Cian silently watches how they behave, irritated by their impudence. He understands that it is time to intervene. Strength flashes in one of the guys. He is ready to use Manu to start a strange and cruel. They explain the rules. You need to put the sphere of mana into the mouth of another. Cian hardly restrains anger. Calmly, but with a threat, Cian offers to join the game, holding his dark magical sphere in his hand. The blonde in shock looks at Cian, realizing that the situation is getting out of control. Meanwhile, Cian easily forms a huge sphere of dark energy, from which danger. He approaches the offender, calmly asking why he does not open his mouth, although he himself offers. Internally, Cian notes that the one who faces him does not have the courage to bring what he started. Later, Cian finds himself in the room where the wounded guy lies, and next to the girl carefully watching. Cian comes closer, and the guy, embarrassed, asks where he knows. Losing, the guy blushes, admitting that he cannot understand why Cian constantly looks at him, feeling him. Cian, with a smile, says that it seemed as if he knew him, but now he was not sure. Nearby, the standing girl carefully monitors their conversation, slightly surprised how quickly Cian got closer to the one who was a victim of bullying. The guy looks at the girl with surprise, not believing his ears when she calls the place where he lives a hostel for the memories of how he signed up for the academy without supporting the family, returning to him, and he sadly lowers his. The girl directly says that since there is no one to help him, he may have to leave the academy. She suddenly shows compassion, saying that it is sorry for him because he was left completely. At this moment, Cian intervenes, saying that she can take him as her subordinate, causing surprise to everyone. The girl is amazed to hear Cian's proposal, not understanding what he was driving. When she clarifies that we are talking about the boy, Cian correctly straightens her. Everyone turns to her in shock, realizing that all this time they were mistaken in her field. The girl confusedly admits that she was not going to deceive anyone. It was just more convenient to her. She explains that others often take her as a guy, and this even became a common thing for her. But lowering her head, she apologizes for the deception and says that she did not expect that even Cian knew the truth. After a pause, the girl asks what the princess now thinks about her, clearly worried about her opinion. The princess confidently replies that if she joins her, no one else dares to offend. She promises that in her environment, the girl will be able to study what she wants and will feel. The guy is struck by her words, not believing that someone can simply offer. The princess says thank you with a soft smile, and the girl finally dares to smile back. In response to gratitude, the princess laughs and says that all this is the idea of Cian and not her personal initiative. The scene ends at how the three of them stand in the room discussing what to do next. Cian from afar watches this, realizing that now the girl is safe under the auspices of the princess. At this time, in another place, a mysterious person, holding a jewelry in his hands, mentions that he found a way to gain strength. She is the best fencer of the continent who never lost her mana. It will not be easy to win it even for me, and I must be ready for this meet. But now my thoughts are busy, completely different. I have a new goal that requires all my attention, and this will be my first real mission from the organization Fog, and I have to cope with it without error.